We had been researching on our own for decades before that. Bear, I don't know his background. He used to build houses like y'all see up on these big fancy, like up at Malibu and Bel Air and stuff like that. He built big, fancy houses down in Mississippi. Believe it or not, they got them like that in Mississippi. You wouldn't think it. And me, I'm from UCLA. That's the upper corner of Leeton, Alabama.
That's it.
And
And we got LA in Alabama. Y'all didn't steal that. We just used lower Alabama.
yeah. But anyway, I'm from up in northwest Alabama. Grew up on a farm. There were Bigfoot, or we call them boogers, on the farm, and my grandmother and my great-grandmother and the family just talked about them just like they were just as normal as rabbits and squirrels and stuff. Matter of fact, it was no big deal for a Bigfoot to be around, but when the first deer showed up, it was, oh my gosh, they couldn't believe it. And when the coyotes moved in, they couldn't believe that we had coyotes move in. You know, that was a big deal to us. But anyway, I grew up there near the town of Muscle Shoals. Some of you guys may have heard that. And a lot of good music made there.
Leonard Skinner
and John Lennon recorded there. Bob Seger, whole bunch of them. Paul Simon. And anyway, moving right along. I first became aware of Bigfoot when I was 3 years old. We were out playing around one evening, myself and some of the neighbor kids. We had 4 other families that lived on the farm besides us and my grandparents. And 2 of those families lived on top of the same hill about 3/8 of a mile north of us that my grandparents lived on. And we were all of us kids were over there playing around around my grandparents' house. And along about dusky dark, down in the lane north of the house, started hearing this god-awful screaming. And, you know, you don't remember much from the time you were 3 years old, but I remember that screaming. And I also remember how my grandparents and how Mrs. Terry and Mrs. Hudson reacted as they started gathering all us kids up and getting us in the house. And we lived, later on, Mama came over and got me and took me home. And so that night, you know, we eat dinner. And every once in a while, we kept hearing that terrible scream from down in the lane. And we went to bed, and we didn't have air conditioning back then. We slept with the windows open and with an attic fan going so cool air would be sucked in from outside. I'm laying there in the bed, and I could hear that thing screaming down there, and it was coming closer. And I'd asked my grandpa, you know, what's that? And he said, oh, that ain't nothing but that old catamount. And most people think a catamount is a cougar. But to my parents, it was what we now know as Bigfoot. The word Bigfoot had not been invented in 1958. And the Yeti hadn't even been heard of in 1958 in Alabama. So they called them a lot of different things. Boogers, hanks, no-heads, goat men, not dog men, hairy men, wild men. But anyway, laying there in the bed, and the thing's getting closer and closer, screaming about every 15, 20 minutes. And we had a big fence that went between my grandparents' house and the Terry's house. And there was a gate on that fence that was about this high. And it was made out of stamped steel. It was very noisy anytime you touched it. And heard the thing scream, and then it hit that gate. And when it did, the Hudsons had 7 bad coon hounds. There were plot hounds and catahoulas, and if anybody knows anything about them, they are very gamey, rough dogs. They're not scared of anything. And all 7 of those dogs came boiling off of their porch and hauled ass, you know, down there after it. And they laid into that thing. And we can hear it clear as bell because, you know, we got all our windows open. And there's this god-awful, you know, growling and carrying on and roaring of the booger. And all of a sudden we started hearing, in the middle of that, started hearing dogs, you know, screaming like crazy, you know, and hearing some of them, you know, like that, and running back to the house. And some of them just they'd be screaming, and all of a sudden and that'd be the end of it. About that time, I heard over at my grandfather's house, I heard my grandfather start shooting his 30-30, and he emptied that thing. And then he loaded it up, and my dad goes flying out of the house with a shotgun loaded up with buckshot. And he jumped in the truck and goes hauling butt over there. I hear my dad start shooting. And Mama gathered me, and my little sister was only a month or two old, and gathered us up, and we went in the bathroom and locked the door. She heard us all in the bathroom, and she locked the door. And after a while, Daddy came back. Well, the next morning, we went over there. And two things had happened. First of all, the Hudsons had packed up in the middle of the night and they were gone. And they ran our sawmill. They gone. They never set foot on that place again. We had to shut down the sawmill for a while before we get some more people in there to run it. And the other thing was there were pieces of dog laying all over the place. And I'm sitting there looking at that, and there's like a dog leg over here, and there's a head over here, and there's guts and stuff over here. And my grandmother came out and grabbed me and took me in the house, wouldn't let me look at it anymore. And my dad got to look around, found another one of the dogs that was still alive but torn all up, and he put it out of its misery. And that thing had killed 6 out of 7 of the dogs. One of them recovered after going to the vet. And again, Daddy, what was that? It's just that old catamount. Don't worry about it. It's not going to bother you. And not long after that, it was right before my grandfather died, he loaded me up in the truck, and we rode out to a big oak tree that grew on a ridge out east of their house. And he said, my grandfather never ever called me by my name. He never called me anything but boy. We pulled up in the truck, and he pointed at this big oak tree. And if you've seen how a tree grows, when it grows not in the woods but in the wide open, it has limbs all the way down to the ground. And it's much more full than trees that grow back in the woods. And this was a perfect climbing tree. And he pointed to that tree. He said, boy, you see that tree right there? Yes, sir. He said, those catamounts sit up in that tree and watch us. And every time I come back here, they jump down out of that tree and run down that holler right there. He said, I don't want you ever to come back here climbing that tree. And don't you ever bring your little sister back here. Well, at 3 years old, I wasn't thinking about climbing a tree, but I do remember the conversation. And, of course, my sister was a newborn, so that had never entered my mind. A couple of months later, my grandfather had died. All right, fast forward about a year. And I'm in bed one night. In our house, we didn't have the money to put gutters on the house after my dad built the house. And we built the house out of bricks that they salvaged from an old burnt down building and wood that they cut on the farm. And we would get torrential rains down there all the time, and the dirt is red clay, and it'd run off the house, hit the ground, splash up red clay all over the outside. My mom didn't like the way it looked, so we had a gravel pit on the farm. So we'd hauled a couple of loads of gravel up there, and we'd put gravel all around the outside of the house, about a 4-foot wide strip, which is still there today. And that way, the water fell off and hit the gravel and didn't splatter dirt on the house. Well, I'm laying there in the bed next to the window, and I hear somebody walking outside on that gravel, crunching. Well, I thought maybe it was Danny Terry. And I'm 4 years old at this time. So I leaned out the window, and I looked out there, and I didn't see anything, and I turned my head this way, didn't see anything. I turned my head to the left, and there was this booger right here, that red-haired booger, and he was about 7 feet tall, and he had his back up against the wall of the house looking at me. His palms were flat against it. It was like that. And when I looked at him, he did like that. He bared his teeth at me. And to this day, I don't know if he was attempting to smile at me or if he was threatening me. And the moon was up, and my bedroom's on the south side of the house. So the moon was glinting in his eyes, and his eyes were glowing yellow. And the moonlight was glinting off of that red hair, that reddish colored hair, and it looked like blood to me. And it looked like he had blood all over him. And I go flying out of the bed and go running into my parents' room. Mama, Daddy, there's a yellow-eyed, bloody-headed monster outside my window. And my dad never hesitated. He came flying out of the bed, grabbed the shotgun, goes hauling ass outside in nothing but his boxer shorts and with a shotgun. And he goes around the house, and in a minute he comes back, and my mom, did you see anything? No, but I heard it go running off. And so Daddy came in my room, pulled my bed away from the window, put it on an adjacent wall, turned it around so that the head of the bed was away from the window. My feet was towards the window. I got on the bed next to the wall. My daddy laid down next to me with, like I said, his feet towards the wall where he could see the window. And that 12-gauge shotgun laid right here beside him. That's how we slept that night. And I think the next couple of nights I slept in the bed with my parents. I had nightmares about that for decades. Some years later, I had a little brother come along. And Mac wet the bed for a long time, up till he was a teenager. And then my brother Scott, he came along a couple of years after that. He would never stay in his bedroom at night. He'd always end up in my sister's bedroom. We didn't have curtains on our windows. My sister had curtains on her windows, and she had her own little half bath or three-quarter bath, and she had frosted glass in her bathroom, whereas the boys' bathroom was just open windows. My dad died in 2011. We were sitting around after the funeral, the first time the family had been together in a while. We were all sitting around him. My brother said, just out of the blue, he said, y'all know why I wet the bed for so many years? I don't know why. I thought something was wrong with you or something. He said, every damn time that I'd wake up and have to go to the bathroom, that damn monster would be sitting there looking in my bedroom window. And then when I'd go to the bathroom, he'd get up there in the bathroom window and start making a bunch of racket, and sometimes he'd reach up there and scratch at the screen. And he said, that's why I wet the bed for so many years. I was scared to get out of the bed. And my youngest brother's sitting there, and he got this shocked look on his face, and he said, well, that's why I never stayed in my bedroom at night, because every time I'd look over at the window, he'd be sitting there looking in the window at me. So I'd jump up and run in Melanie's room. So here, all these years, it had terrorized the three of us kids, and we had never talked about it amongst each other. That was astounded me. But anyway, that was my childhood history with them, and we had some other things happen. There's way too much to talk about here, but I'm going to turn it over to Bear now.
What year did this happen?
Started out in 1958.
1958. Where at?
Outside of Ford City, Alabama. This is out about 13, 14 miles east of Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Our farm is right on the Tennessee River, and we still own the farm, and there are still boogers there. And everybody who's spent any time very much on that farm has had encounters with them, including my highfalutin brother-in-law that's a deputy director at NASA that used to tease me mercilessly. And by the way, I used to work for NASA, and I worked for the Army Missile Command. I held a top secret clearance for 31 years, and interesting thing is, while I was out, I soon discovered that there were lots and lots of Bigfoot on almost every military installation or government installation that I was ever at. And believe it or not,
California.
And believe it or not, when I was working on the space shuttle program, we used to have to come out here to Edwards Air Force Base when the shuttle landed, and we had to deintegrate or take some of the experiments off the shuttle. And a lot of times, sometimes they would extend the mission, so we'd have 2 or 3 extra days. Well, I'd get out Bigfooting, and I knew that I had learned over the years the kind of people to talk to find out information. And there are Bigfoot on Edwards Air Force Base. As a matter of fact, there were 9 or 10 of them that used to come into the main base complex on a pretty regular basis. They knew them so well, they had them named.
Named them.
And they even had a training video on them. And they went to great lengths to tell the security people not to shoot at them, not to bother them. And believe it also, I found out, I used to wonder, when the shuttle was coming in, there were these vehicles that would go way out there in the desert, over there and sit near the mouths of some of the canyons One day we were having a security briefing, and I said, "What are those guys sitting way out there doing?" And one of the guys said, "I'll tell you about it later." And it turns out that some of them actually walk right across the dadgum runway. And so they said the last thing that they want to do is have it on national news, the shuttle landing, and a booger walks out there and the shuttle flattened a booger. True. So those guys, that was their job, was to keep the boogers from coming out when the shuttle was landing. Now, did they ever have to do it or not? I don't know, but they were out there just in case.
But the reason I brought up the deal about Muscle Shoals, Alabama in 1958, if you guys will remember, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin did not make that infamous ride until 1967, when he first mentioned the word boogers a while ago. If anybody's got a patent on the name, it's LA, Lower Alabama. They better hope like hell that me and Coonbo don't prove its existence, because we're working real hard to doing this. Because if we do, just to piss everybody off in the Pacific Northwest, we're going to label these suckers as boogers. Because they had dumped on us for years and years and years. And I'm not putting the Pacific Northwest down. Just because Bob and Roger made that ride, and they got that one footage of it, Bigfoot become a product of the Pacific Northwest, which includes Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. What they didn't realize was people in the South was ordering, these outside lights that people put up in their yards. You know what they call them when they make the order in the South? I want some of them booger lights put in my yard.
Yep.
I'm not lying here, guys.
Yep.
A lot of you guys will think about a lot of things we're going to say here tonight. One of the other things was, how many folks, raise your hand and don't be ashamed. If you don't get your ass in the house, that booger we're going to get you. Y'all didn't play outside at night? What's wrong with you guys?
Nobody ever threatened y'all about the booger man's going to get you?
Yeah, see, they go to boogie. Folks in California, we done figured out y'all got a language all your own. Something's wrong with you guys. Tim, actually, you notice they talk funny?
Yeah. If our farm had been here in California, we wouldn't have called him booger. We'd call it, "Hey man, it's that big hairy dude." Dude. Hey man, that's the dude up there,
Yeah, he got a hold of the wrong mushrooms, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
In 1966, I was 6 years old. Reason I remember the date was because my father had left my mom 6 weeks after my baby sister was born. My baby sister was 6 weeks old. She was born the 5th of July. So this happened in August. And the only reason I remember it at 6 years of age, because Daddy was not around anymore. My mom was trying to hold herself together for us kids. It was me. I had a younger brother. He was 2 years younger than me. And then we had a new sister in the family. And just like Coonbo, we didn't have an air conditioner. We lived out in the middle of the country. Actually, the property that I'm talking about, I still own to this day, and there are still boogers on the property. And Tim, we're going to talk about that later. Because we've had some adventures on my property as we have on Tim's property. But this one particular night, we didn't have an air conditioner. We had a window box fan. Y'all know these little box fans? We put it in the dining room at the other end of the house, opened up every window in the house so it was blowing out and the air was drawing into the bedrooms. 1966, before Roger and Bob made this ride. Something woke me up. I don't know if it was early or late, because I didn't give a damn what time it was, not at 6 o'clock. but something woke me up. And what it was, the headboard of our bed was up against the east wall. The west wall was facing the back of our property. When my dad and my grandfather built the house in 1960, they leveled off the land and pushed all the excess dirt to the back. Now, my grandfather, that's the only acre of his whole property that we do not currently own to this day because my dad left my mom and she couldn't afford to pay for it, so we had to sell it. But my grandfather had cattle and we had horses. How many people when they was 6 years old was going to the bathroom in the outhouse, but he owned 3 horses? See, I was rich, but I was poor and I didn't even know it. But as I said, the headboard of our bed was on the east wall. At the foot of the bed was our window with the curtains open so the breeze could come through. On about 25 yards across the yard, my grandfather had built a 4-strand barbed wire fence, comes up to about right here, to keep all of his cattle and his horses on the property. But we wanted to fence the yard in so we could have a regular yard. Something woke me up early that morning and it was going, somehow or another, I don't know nothing about moon stages at 6 years old, and I ain't gonna look it up. Don't give a damn. But there was enough ambient light in that backyard. I don't know what moon stage it was, but it was bright enough that I could see, in my mind and my opinion, the biggest damn ape I've ever seen in my life was draped. You hear what I'm saying? Draped over that 4-strand barbed wire fence like this. Looking dead into the bedroom window. I woke up, I saw that rascal, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My brother was in the bed next to me. Hell, I wanted him to enjoy what I was looking at, you know. So I nudged him. Hey, look. Now, there's one thing you gotta know about my brother. He don't give a damn about nothing. He took one look and hauled ass. And believe you me, folks, fear is infectious. Because when he abandoned my ass in that bed, I was gone too. We dove into Mama's bed, which was right directly across the hallway from our bedroom. At the time, I remember this, and this is important. I'm not going to go into a bunch of it. But every story that you hear of an encounter with a booger or a Bigfoot or whatever you choose to call it has very pertinent information that has clues that will clue you into why things happen the way it did. We dove in the bed with Mama. Of course, you got to remember, we noticed something else when we dove in the bed with Mama. My 6-week-old baby sister was over here fidgeting and crying in the bed, making mewing baby type calls. Plus, my mama, who was being strong for me and my brother, because we didn't have the father figure around the house, she kept all this bottled up inside of her. And at night, when she knew or thought we was asleep, she would go in there and cry practically all night long because didn't have a father in the house. Those were the clues I put together over the years. We didn't have an alpha male around. This thing had been watching us probably as long as I've been in the world. Then all of a sudden the alpha male is no longer around. They kind of adopt you in a way. I'm not talking about wanting to come and share the dinner table with you, only they will do that too if you invite them in. Just don't do it. Because I promise you don't want to clean up after them. More ways than one. But Mom said, "What's wrong? What's wrong, guys?" And I said, "Mom, there's a big monkey outside our window." "Oh, baby, there's no such things as big monkeys in Mississippi." But one thing I remember about that night, my mama damn sure didn't get out of bed to go look and see. Then we find out later through this incident, happened when I was about 10, 11 years old. How many people know what lightning bugs are? Yankees call them fireflies. We call them lightning bugs.
That's right.
Yeah. They got to energize a battery on their eggs. We was out catching lightning bugs one evening. Of course, due to my dad leaving, my mom had to give up the house, so the best thing in the world ever happened to us was we moved in with my grandfather. And he's the one who taught me how to hunt. He's taught me how to fish, taught me everything I know about tracking and being in the woods, survival skills, the whole 9 yards. And I owe him a debt of gratitude for that to this day. But I owe him a lot more than that because he knew about these things, but he never come clean with us. He was trying to wait until we got old enough that we would understand what we're dealing with. Because we couldn't go out and brag about this to everybody. If we did, we was ridiculed, made fun of, the whole 9 yards. We was out chasing these lightning bugs late one evening. To understand a lightning bug, they breed in the spring. The one with the brightest ash, the brightest flash, he's the one, that's why they shoot off those beams. They're trying to attract the females. So we was out there filling little bitty old mason jars full of lightning bugs that we was catching. My grandfather come to the back porch 2 or 3 times and told us, "Y'all need to come on in the house. You're going to run into a snake crawling around," because in Mississippi or in the South in the evening when the snakes start crawling, it gets cooler. And we was running across this cow pasture out there chasing these lightning bugs down. Third time he comes to the back porch to yell at us, he sees something moving about 50 yards past where me, my brother, and my sister was running around in this field. And he saw it move. Then he saw it go from an upright position onto all fours and start loping towards me, my brother, and my sister. We didn't know this was going on, guys. We was catching lightning bugs. We didn't care. We was running around out there in that field, screaming in high-pitched, children-like voices. None of us were have reached sexual maturity yet. We're all high-pitched voice, the whole 9 yards. A lot of people who listen and read accounts of Bigfoot, they are attracted by high-pitched voices, like children or babies. Remember my sister crying, in the house? You put all these clues together later. But right then, see, this is a learning curve. My grandfather tears out of the back porch of the house. He didn't have time to grab a gun or nothing. And he starts running across this pasture, and he had to circumvent a ditch that he knew that if he had to climb up and down, he'd never make it to me, my brother, and my sister in time. So he was running and screaming and cussing and throwing his arms up, acting a damn fool if you want the truth. Because me and my brother and my sister is like one of those Hanna-Barbera cartoons. All of a sudden we hear him start cussing and raising hell. We thought he didn't got into some loco weed or something. We all stopped what we was doing immediately and looked straight at him. But my granddaddy wasn't looking at us. He was looking at something past our right. And we all noticed it about the same time. And then we all turned our head to the right, and here comes this 7-foot booger loping on 4 legs towards us. There goes my brother again. He drops his mason jar and likes to knock my granddaddy down on the way to the house. But I was put into a fix. My she wasn't in school yet. That's why I can't remember the exact date. I know it was around 70, 71, 72. She melted. Her legs went out from under her, and she started screaming hysterically. I was caught and torn between following my brother. Remember what I said about fear being infectious? I wanted to follow him as straight as I could to that house. But there was something inside that said, don't leave your baby sister. Don't leave your baby sister. That was one of the hardest moments and hardest decisions I ever had to make in my young life. But I never left my baby sister. I looked at the booger running toward us, then I looked back at my granddaddy, and I looked back at the booger, and I looked back at my granddaddy, and I noticed real quick that that damn booger was going to get there to us before my granddaddy was. We figured it out. About that time, now bear in mind now, my grandfather is raising 10 times worth of hell trying to get this thing's attention. But this thing was so focused on me and my brother and my sister while we was out there having fun, squealing, raising Cain, chasing lightning bugs, just having a great time. It was so focused on us, it never paid any attention to my granddaddy until my grandfather come within its sight line. When it come within its sight line, that booger, about from here to Alex, what's your name? Yeah, I'm going to get your name right one of these days. About from me to him, and it stopped. And it was looking dead at my grandfather, who was steadily running up there to where me and my sister was. Then it rose up as tall as it could on two legs. Remember, it was running towards us, loping on all fours. They're knuckle walkers, people. They're knuckle walkers when they go on all fours. We'll get into that later, too. That thing stood up as fully erect as it could. I'm going to give y'all a secret and a clue right now. If anybody ever tells you they seen a Bigfoot and its knees are locked like this, they're lying. They can't lock their knees, people. I'm telling you, they can't lock their knees. They're like this all the time. Watch my shoulders when I do it. Watch the length of my arms when I do it. Everybody says these things got arms longer as long as their legs. No, they don't. It's their posture. How many people seen Patty? Did she ever lock her knees? Ain't going to either. She can't. This thing stood up, and the expression, and there's another little fable I've heard for years. How many people ever said if you ever run into one in the woods, don't never look him in the eye? Bullshit. Watch him. Watch him. Because if you ain't looking him in the eyes, how in the hell are you going to let him know that you see him? I've even had researchers in Carbon Hills, Alabama. Remember Hawk Spearman?
Oh, yeah.
He got hemmed up in a pine thicket one time by these things, and he got down on his hands and knees and was presenting his machete to him. The guy that come to visit him was from West Virginia. West Virginia, he said, get down. He said, the hell with you, and he hauled ass. When he did, the booger and Hawk Spearman hauled ass too.
Yeah.
But see, you got to look them in the eye to know what their intent is. This thing, when I was watching him, was happy, having him a good time, and he wasn't coming to try to eat me or my sister. I think, actually, he was a young one. His head is still more rounded, sort of like this. I have black ones on my place, black hair. It's not fur, it's hair, pelt.
Exactly.
Hair. His is red. We got red ones.
But not all of them are red. It's just they vary by individual. There's red ones, there's brown ones. Most of the big males are black. You know, they got gray or sort of charcoal gray skin and shiny black hair. And a lot of them look like they just came from the beauty parlor.
Yep.
I mean, the hair in the wind, you can see it, moving around. Flowing hair.
Flowing hair.
And it, real shiny. The moon glints off of it.
And it shines that pelt.
Yep.
But that booger, when he stood up as tall as he could, he had a look on his face of complete embarrassment. That's the way I understood it to be. It was like, what in the heck did I just do? It was like, man, I got caught up in the moment here, and I want to go play with these kids, and now this adult's coming in here and going to screw it up. And when he realized the adult was there, it was like he become embarrassed. And what he did was he slowly turned, never taking his eyes off my granddaddy, and slowly walked on two legs into the woods. That's when my grandfather come clean with me and my brother that he'd been knowing of these things on that property since he was courting. I'm going to use an old word here.
Yep.
He was dating my grandmama, but they called it courting back in those days. He'd been knowing there was Bigfoot or boogers on these properties since the late 30s. So he knew they was already there. So that's how I ended up having a mentor per se, or people I could talk to about this. And how many in here, and I'm not going to ask you to tell your story or anything, how many has actually seen one? Raise your hand. And that's nothing to be ashamed of, guys, because actually, First Nation people will tell you, the ones that see them because they are allowed to be seen. And I believe that. These things determine if you are worthy enough or that type of a person that they can show themselves to them. Not just picking you out or anything like this. They won't show themselves to people who go into the woods throwing their candy wrappers and their cigarette butts this way and that way and all that kind of mess. They're watching you all the time. And if they judge in their primitive logic that you are worthy enough to be shown what else is in the woods with you, that's when these things will inadvertently stick out for some reason. And I can promise you, it's very, very rare that they expose themselves by accident.
Unless you piss them off.
Oh, yeah.
Now, nobody gets any slack cut if you piss them off.
None.
Like if you're out there, like teenage kids do, building a campfire out there, sitting out there drinking beer and maybe sampling some left-handed cigarettes or something, and got the Led Zeppelin turned up real loud or something like that. By the way, when the Led Zeppelin, when the levee breaks, that's a pretty good way of getting them to come to you, but you're not going to like it when they get there. Because they are not Led Zeppelin fans.
Nope.
If they could talk like my dad used to talk, Tim, turn that shit down. Except they say something like that, but it's in their language,
I know they don't like Robert Plant's high-pitched voice.
Yeah.
They don't like Jimmy Page's screaming guitar.
Nope. They don't like Van Halen
I'm telling you. See, what we're telling you now are clues.
Yeah.
Why is those high-pitched voices and musical instruments annoying them? You want me to tell you why? Because they hear in frequencies that we as humans cannot hear. So actually, we're probably torturing the hell out of them.
They also don't like it when you got a RV and you leave your generator running all night so that your air conditioner works. They don't like that at all.
Same things work with certain lawnmowers, garden tillers, weed eaters, generators. Say a fan comes out of a sink on your air conditioner. Or
something.
Yeah.
That just reminds me. They love to mimic things, and we've gone out to investigate, to talk to people who've had weird encounters. That thing's making a funny noise, just sitting there going, brr, 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 brr.
I was the one who investigated that one.
Go ahead. Look over there, and there's a weed eater taken apart and laying over there. What's the matter with the weed eater? Well, it won't crank. I've been out here pulling that thing, pulling it. You pull the weed eater, what does it sound like? Brr, brr, brr. I've got a.
We got the recording.
And I've got a recording here of one imitating somebody's Harley cranking up. And it's a pretty good imitation.
These things are boring. They bored stiff, guys. Yeah. We're their entertainment.
All right.
Have you got it? Can you get to it?
What's that?
Oh,
yeah, I can do that.
Show them what that.
All right, let me see if I can find that.
Well, you're doing that. I'll show them what they do when you piss them off.
Yeah. Now, I pissed this one off accidentally.
He was showing out.
I was showing my ass. I was showing my
it.
ass. And, yeah, I was late to an outing. I came pulling up there. Everybody was already there. Camper and leaned out the window and did a call right there in the campground. And this is what happened. From about here to the wall behind us. Can you put it right next to the mic?
Did y'all hear that?
See if you can get your speaker right next to the microphone.
I'm working on it. Yeah. I am totally illiterate at this kind of stuff. You hear us talking? You hear him screaming? We was right there.
Oh, by the way, and about 35, 40 feet away from where that dude was standing right in the edge of the woods, there were 3 families setting up tents for camping.
Yes.
Let me tell you what, they had all their stuff out there. They had their stuff thrown in the back of that truck and were gone in less than 2 minutes. Gone.
We had the whole campground to ourselves.
We had the whole campground to ourselves for 4 days.
Sure did.
Sure did.
He had to show out. We had a detective lieutenant come from Devil's Fall, North Dakota down there.
Devil's Lake.
Devil's Lake? Yeah. We've had people come and go out with us. Daniel Falconer, he's got an Oscar for his work on Lord of the Rings. A little movie called Lord of the Rings. Just a little one. But he's flown all the way from New Zealand to Birmingham, Alabama, and went with us to Chinook and G-Hall Mountain in Alabama. And he got a recording of one that night, happy as hell. He said, Bear, what can we do with this recording? I want to kind of give you some credit, but I can't give you none. What can we do? I said, let me think about it, and I'll tell you in the morning. They had just got through doing the Twin Towers movie, and they was filming Return of the Kings. Is that the third one? I'm not into all this, guys. I said, look at here, dude. I said, how good are you with sound effects in these Hobbit series movies? He said, pretty cool. We work together pretty well, I said, do me a favor. He said, what's that? I said, why don't you get that sound effects guy to use that recording in Return of the Kings? So now, every one of you guys who's ever seen Return of the Kings, y'all go listening and find out which one's a Bigfoot, because we recorded him in Talladega, Alabama. A lot of people don't know that. That's a true story. You found it yet?
No, I'm looking for it.
All right, I can allow some more then until you get ready. Right.
I'm not believing you. I hope I didn't.
Oh, okay. She wanted me to tell about that one. Not many people heard that one. I've got a million stories Tim does too. When Tom.
Here's the T-Rex scream right here.
Oh, well, we were looking for the other one. Well, you can play it again if you want to. See, I told you you're going to be fiddle farting with that thing all night. That's the motorcycle, ain't it? You ain't found that other? No. All right, I'm going to tell this story. You keep looking unless you want to tell the story. When they said we only had 2 hours, I said, hell, that ain't enough. But we gonna stay as long as y'all let us before you run us off. But one night, someone was getting my granddaddy's chickens out of the chicken pen. This happened in the 80s. I wasn't living there. None of us was. My granddaddy got tired of it because they were getting his egg-laying hens. They was pissing him off.
Here we go.
Okay.
Already started right here.
Well, you want me to finish my story now?
I'll go ahead and see you then.
Show the motorcycle.
I'll
Go ahead.
So go ahead.
Well, I ain't started good. Just keep going.
All right, here we go. Oh man, that didn't sound like anything.
Thought you done already got you. That sounds like bloop.
Well, my headphones sound fantastic.
Let's give them all a headphone. It's distorted. Let me go on with my story. We're boring on this. But my granddaddy, he said, I'm going to catch that son of a bitch that's getting my chickens. Whatever it was, he had an opposable thumb because we had these dog latches that you put on a dog collar, you got to pull the latch down. All right, he had that as to lock the chicken coop. But see, inside the coop was wire about 10 foot tall, and there's where the chickens run around the chicken yard. Inside the coop, we had this little chicken house, which was the coop itself. When the birds or the chickens would go in there at night to go to roost. He knew that every time this happened, we had two big old black Labrador retrievers we let run around in the yard. They was farm dogs. We didn't let them in the house. We didn't believe in dogs in the house. Boy, y'all would hate my guts out here in California. I think a requirement out here is you got to have one or two ugly dogs. I think I want to just spend the rest of my life following my dog around picking up his dog shit. Best fertilizer in the world in the country. Y'all need to move out in the sticks. I'm telling you, y'all missing it. You don't have to pick it up out there. Unless you accidentally step in it, and then you don't want the dog no more. But anyway, whenever these dogs would go, the booger would come around the house, they'd get up under the house. The house was about that tall off the ground. They'd start coming up under the house and hitting them floor joists with their backs and their heads. You can hear them. They'd be boom, 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 boom. Well, it was sort of raining that night. It was a slow drizzle rain, and the dogs, sure enough, boom, 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 boom. So my granddaddy, instead of turning on the light in the house, he was smart. He had a pair of them old boxer underwear drawers. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Them old solid white boxers. And then everybody calls them wife beater t-shirts. They look like muscle shirts, white ones. He was wearing that. And then he reaches down beside his bed. He had them old Brogan boots. Y'all know what Brogan boots are? That's these old boots that look like combat boots that got laces. You know what I'm talking about? Well, he didn't even want to take the time to lace his boots up, so he stuck his old feet in them Brogan boots, and his old dog ears were flopping around, and the dang laces was everywhere. He was stepping all over himself. He had a 16-gauge double-barrel shotgun, but my granddaddy was hard-headed. I don't know where I get mine from, but he was hard-headed. And whenever he would open up a box of shells, like number 8 bird shots, you took dove hunting. Number 6, you took rabbit hunting. Number 4 is you take pheasant or coon hunting or squirrels, whatever. Then you had buckshot and double-aught buckshot and slugs. So whenever my granddaddy would open a new box of shells, he'd just dump them all in the same drawer. He didn't keep a loaded gun in the house. We learned about gun safety real young when we was young. And I'm a proud believer that, we have the right to own and bear arms. If not for nothing else but our own personal protection. But he just happened to reach into that drawer and pick out 2 shells and popped it into the gun. What he didn't realize was he done popped in a double-aught buckshot and a slug. This double-barrel shotgun was not cut down for size. My granddaddy stood about that tall. He was the biggest man I ever knew in my whole life. Soaking wet. he had this darn shotgun with a barrel about that long. I think it was an old foul shotgun, you know, for birds, long range. I think his boss man gave it to him years ago. And he had this big old flashlight. It was about that long. So here my granddaddy is. He gets this shotgun. He's loading it up. He grabs his flashlight. He ain't turned on a light in the house. Ain't grabbed a flashlight. He goes on the back porch. He noticing this drizzling rain. So he decides to pick up this poncho that he has there. He puts the poncho over his head. He goes out in the backyard. Now, can you just imagine this in the dark? Here a man is about this tall, trying to hold a double-barrel shotgun, a flashlight that he can turn on, and he done already draped over his head a hood. He looked like a gnome or something, you know. He walks up to the chicken coop. He sees that the gate's wide open. I got that son of a bitch now. Walks into the chicken coop. Now remember, it's raining. Chicken coop. It's a little square circle, about like that, where chickens run around and poop in all the time. So he was walking around in his brogan boots, his white drawers, his white beater shirt, a poncho over his head, walking in chicken crap up to his ankles. He goes up there to the chicken house, and there's the door open, and he could hear the chickens in there. They was restless. Something was in there screwing with them. He said, I got him this time. I got him this time. Then he says, now he gets to thinking, how in the hell am I going to hold this shotgun and this flashlight to confront this? He thought it was a vagrant. He never was thinking booger. I mean, and we had him on the place. Yeah. So he takes the shotgun and he puts it under this arm. And he's holding, and he's got both dog-eared triggers pulled back, click, click. He's got his flashlight right here, and he turns around that corner and he uses the barrel of that shotgun to open the door wider. And he pushes that door open, then he hits that light, and when he does, he said, there's this 8-foot booger stooped down with a chicken in this hand, a chicken in his hand, looking like, what the hell? Scared the hell out of my granddaddy, so he hits the first trigger. Well, it had double-aught buckshot in it. Knocked him smooth on his ass in that yard. When he hit the first trigger, the second trigger went off. He blew a hole in the side of the chicken coop, killed half the damn chickens. Missed the damn booger. The booger tore the rest of the wall out, heading north up the hill, and took half the damn fence with him. I get a phone call early the next morning. He said, Bear, what are you doing this weekend? I think this happened on Thursday. I said, I don't know what's going on. He said, them son of a bitches done tore up my chicken house and tore down my damn fence. I said, well, what do you want me for? He said, I need you to come over here and help me put the damn thing back together again. I said, all right, I'll come up there. That's when I heard the whole story. Here my grandfather is lying around in the ground in white muscle shirt, chicken shit everywhere. Half of his chickens are dead. Backside of the chicken house is busted wide open, and there ain't no pen no more because the son of a bitch drug the pen up the hill. The wire. I mean, he got hanged up. Could you just imagine when that booger got back to the truth and was telling them that story? Now think about it from a booger's perspective, and I'll let it go. Here this booger is, done got him this old hen, and he turns around and he sees this big light shining him in the eye. And then he sees this big old hood, looks like a damn hobbit. And then all of a sudden, this huge wall of flame comes out of this big stick he's holding. People, now I know why boogers believe in UFOs. True story.
Yeah. I wanted to add something about the story I told about when first time when the booger got after all the dogs. My grandfather knew better than to shoot at the booger. dad knew better than to shoot at the booger. They were just shooting in the air trying to scare it off. The last thing you want to do is shoot at one. But anyway, do what? You don't want to piss them off. If you happen to kill one, the rest of the troop will take retribution against you, and that's happened time and
They've
time.
done it before.
Time again. Yeah.
Most of the worst cases in history involving Bigfoot is because one of them been shot.
Right. All right. I'm going to sort of blow through this. I started investigating these things real seriously back in the mid-'70s, and I've traveled. I've investigated Bigfoot in 38 states plus Ontario, Canada. And at one time, I was probably the most widely traveled Bigfoot researcher in the world. And I might still be that. I don't know. I don't think so. I think the Finding Bigfoot guys probably covered more ground than I have. But they absolutely have not put in anywhere close to the untold tens of thousands of hours in the field that I have, or bear. Anyway, didn't take me very long to figure out that there were different kinds of Bigfoot out there that were, and they seemed to sort of keep together, and they weren't all mixed up. Here in one area, we would have a group of them like on our farm that I call now Type 1. That's the classic patty type. They're heavily built, massively muscled, and they have a prominent sagittal crest. The alpha males average around 10 feet tall and about 4 feet wide across the shoulders, and they'll weigh average about 700 to 900 pounds. However, we have seen them 11 and 12 feet tall, and those probably weigh, they definitely are in excess of 1,000 pounds, we guesstimate, 1,100 pounds, maybe 1,200 extreme. Females, average height is 7 to 8 feet tall, and they average around 450 to 700 pounds. They have plantigrade feet, and what that means is when they're standing upright, their heel is on the ground. And when they're walking bipedally, their heel hits the ground every step. And when you look at their tracks when they're walking upright, you see a full footprint like we leave. And that's as opposed to digitigrade feet, where only the ball of the foot and the toes are on the ground. And in other words, the heel is off the ground, and all you get is a print of the toes and the ball of the foot. So the feet have a lot to do with determining some of the different types. But anyway, they have plantigrade feet. They are most common in the Pacific Northwest and the northern boreal forest, but they are found in small groups around the country. Like I said, the Bigfoot that live on our farm are the Type 1s. You go just a few miles away, and it's predominantly the another Type 2. The Type 1s are the second most common type that we run into. And I think they're the second most common type nationwide. All right, here's an example of the Type 1s. And of course, there's Patty, the famous female from the Patterson-Gimlin film. And here is one that a friend of ours, I think this picture here came out of Oklahoma. And this is a big one walking up the hill. And you can see how massive the thing is across the shoulders. I mean, they are huge. I've seen the one on our farm, the alpha, as an adult. I've seen him a couple of times, and my brothers have seen him, and he leaves a 22-inch track, and he's right at 10 foot tall. I've caught him walking around the end of one of our barns, and we've got a joint in the siding that's exactly 10 feet off the ground. If that joint's here, his head will be bouncing like this, right along that joint. We've also got a tree out there that we've used to pull engines with out of tractors and trucks. From the bottom of that limb to the ground is 11 feet. I've seen him walk underneath that, and he clears it by about that much.
Hang on a second.
Yeah.
10 feet is about the bottom of that speaker, folks. Right here. Right in front of the...
and that's 10 feet is to the hoop on a basketball goal.
That's it.
Yep.
That's huge.
All right. Here's some artwork here, just more examples of Type 1. And now this is artwork, and this one here on the right is that's a really good, some of you special effects guys may have seen that before. That's a created one. All right, the type 2 is what I call the modified Neanderthal type, and they are lighter than a type 1, but they're barrel-chested, muscular, hugely strong, less prominent sagittal crest, more rounded head. They run 7 to 9 feet tall for the males, average of about 8 foot. I've never seen a 9-foot type 2. They've all been 7.5 to 8 feet. The weight is somewhere around 550 to 850 pounds, average of maybe 600, 700 pounds. Now, this is the kind that's on Bear's Farm, and they are by far the most common around the country, around the continental U.S. The females will be 6 to 7 feet tall. They'll weigh 300 to 500 pounds, averaging maybe 400. They also have plantigrade feet. They're widely scattered over a large area of the U.S., and they are generally more aggressive and belligerent than the type 1s. They're the ones that are most likely to not be rock music fans. And they do not like man-made noises in their part of the woods at night. I've been screamed at when I was out running trying to mow my grass at night. You know, I was working a lot of overtime and stuff. The only time I had to mow my yard was at night, so I've got a real good riding mower with real good lights on it. And I've been screamed at several times while I was out mowing the grass at 9, 10 o'clock at night. One time, the dude walked right up in front of me. And he wasn't directly in front of me. He was screaming so loud, I thought I had thrown a belt on the mower. And I stopped and disengaged the clutch and idled the engine down. I could still hear it. And I said, what in the heck? And this thing had cornering lights on it. I flipped on all the lights, and he was standing at about a 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock angle out in front of me about 30 feet away. And I decided I'd mow the grass the next day. But anyway, they got a bazillion different names, swamp ape, skunk ape, boogers, hairy mans. No heads, yowies. By the way, the yowie in Australia, I believe, is a type 2, what we call a type 2. And they are by far the most common type. And here are some pictures. And these are pictures that came from this spring out of Oklahoma from one of our friends. And this is actually, these are frame grabs out of a video, what you're seeing there. Now, notice something here. Notice the hair on this one. This one is obviously been rolling in mud and stuff like that and caking itself with mud to protect it from the horrendous mosquitoes and biting flies and stuff like that that's in Oklahoma. And you can see a little ear right here. But they're not as clean and shiny as the ones that live along major waterways and stuff, usually. Sorry. All right, here is out of the same video another one, and I think this one right here might be a female. And it's much lighter built. The face is a little narrower, and they caught her standing there looking at them in the same video clip. Now, this is one we got on video down in East Texas, and this is a Neches River that's behind her or it. Belly crawling, absolute masters. We've sat there and watched them on thermal imaging crawl 250 yards on their bellies across a hayfield to get to us.
Only real quick, I want to throw this in so you won't get confused.
Yeah.
Belly crawling is like, how many people see the new Spider-Man movie, where he's using his fingertips?
Yeah.
They don't actually crawl on their bellies.
Yeah.
They're using their fingertips.
Yeah.
And they're getting low to the ground.
Yeah. Any of you been in the military and know what a low crawl is? These guys are the masters of the low crawl. And anyway, this son of a gun here crawled up the riverbank and is sitting here peeking over the bank at us. And we shot this at night with a really bright flash, and that's why it looks sort of grainy and everything, because we were using a standard camera that was really not made for this. We were very lucky that it showed up at all. But now, one of the things that happens to us quite often while we're out is type 2s love to count coup on you. Who knows what counting coup is? Anybody know? All right. The Plains Indians used to do this, and it was considered a badge of honor. They would ride up or invade the camp of their enemy and touch them with their hand or with what's called a coup stick and escape without getting injured. And that was considered very honorable. And they actually would get a feather for it, or
usually an eagle feather.
Yeah, an eagle feather, or a lot of them would carry what's called a coup stick, and they would get to notch that stick. But the type 2s do the exact same thing. We have them crawl up under our trucks.
Yep.
We'll park, and we'll be out there calling or doing something like that. Some of the guns will crawl up underneath our stinking trucks, and you go walking around the truck, and there he is laying there, jumps up right in front of you, runs off, scares you half to death. A couple of times, one particular incident, out in the field, we were getting ready to leave, and this guy's wife, who wasn't there anyway, remember Danny?
She give us hell the whole time we was there.
Exactly. She goes around to get in the truck, and as she opens the door and is starting to get in and walked around, the son of a gun reached out and got a hold of her by the ankle. I'd have died.
Instant believer.
Instant believer. Instant believer.
That was instantaneous conversion.
She got to hollering and squalling so loud, scared the booger half to death.
Scared the hell out of us too.
Her truck was a little S10 pickup truck. That booger starts out from under that truck, and that truck's sitting there going, boom, 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 boom. Look like some of these Mexican guys with lowrider shots underneath it.
You looked at me and you said, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah, exactly. But I've had them crawl up under. I used to have a big F-250 Super Duty, and I can't tell you how many times they crawled up underneath that thing.
Well, y'all not got one so tall,
yeah,
Tim.
Exactly.
It made it easier.
I'll tell you a quick story. We were down at a place we call the mounds, the Indian mounds. It's a big hay field, about a couple 100-acre hay field. It's got 5 or 6 Indian mounds out in it. It's one of our favorite research areas. The boogers know me pretty well. And I had a lady by the name of Vicky, another lady by the name of Kelly, who Kelly's passed away now, and then myself and another researcher from St. Louis named Ken Hartung, and had my dog Bo, my world famous booger dog Bo. So we're down at there's one road in and one road out of this place. We went down there. You always, I don't care if you're just going to the state park, anytime you go off the beaten path, before you park your vehicle, you need to turn that dude around and get it pointed the safe way out.
In the get the hell gone direction.
Yeah, right. You don't know if it's going to be a bear after you or meth heads. You don't know what you're going to run into. You don't know if you're going to run into a nest of hornets. When you want to be able to jump in your vehicle and fire
irritated
it up,
landowners.
Right. Right. You want to be able to jump in that vehicle and crank it up, yank that son of a gun in gear and go. But anyway, so we had driven in, turned around, and were pointed out. All right, we were all out of the truck. And we went out there, and these boogers know me. We waited about 10, 15 minutes for things to sort of settle down and get quiet, and I made a call. Well, we got a couple of wood knocks from one way. We got a whoop off from another way. I said, all right, they know we're here. Now, they're not always in there. They travel through a circuit through their territory so that they don't eat up all the food in one place.
Usually it takes them 10 to 12 days to circumvent probably a very roughly 35 to 45 mile zone.
Yeah.
That's why you can't pattern them. You can't keep them in one place.
And when they show back up in a particular area, they're there no more than 3 days, and average about 2 days. Just happened to catch them. They answered me, so I knew they were there. So we're out there walking around, and it's dark. It's 10 o'clock, something like that. And Bo was right there with me. Well, he started getting real nervous around the truck. He didn't want to be near that truck. Bo is a big German Shepherd, a Russian-bred German Shepherd. He weighed about 95 pounds. And he was large and in charge wherever he was. He was a therapy dog, a trained tracker, and trained in weapons detection and personal protection. Hell of a dog. And a booger dog, absolutely extraordinary. Except he would always let us know where they were, but if they got too close and we were too dumb to pay attention to him and get out of there, Bo would abandon our ass. He'd haul ass to the truck. He'd leave us. He'd go to the truck.
Wasn't nothing but a biscuit head coward. That's all I ever got him.
And if he knew, because of the way the boogers crawled up under he wouldn't go under the truck. He'd jump up in the back and get up on the roof of the truck and hunker down.
As high as he can, on top of the truck.
Yep. All right, for some reason, he didn't want to be around that truck. And I couldn't, he was a big enough dog, I couldn't control him if he didn't want to do what I wanted him to do. He twisted out of his collar and hauled ass down the road heading home. Yeah. It was only about 7 miles from the house. And I'm hollering and yelling at him, because where he's got to go is through some ungodly booger-infested territory. And I'm thinking, they're going to get him, because they love to eat dogs. I mean, love to eat dogs. Anyway, he gets to where the road goes into the woods and slams on the brakes, and he starts running up and down the tree line. And then he bails off and heads into the swamp. Well, that's even worse. I'm running like hell down there about a quarter mile, and I get there and I'm yelling, screaming, Bo, Bo! Well, he sees me. He comes flying back up to me. All right. I get a hold of him, put his collar back on it, cinch it down. I start walking him back to the truck. When we get about 50 yards, he just sits down and doesn't want to go. I grabbed him and I'm dragging him backwards up the road to the truck. About that time, Kelly and Vicky started getting the creeps. They decided they were going to go get in the truck. So when one of them opened the door, Bo saw refuge. He hauled butt. He jerked out of my hand and he hauled butt and piled in the truck with Vicky and Kelly and got down in the floorboard. I said, all right, I ain't got to worry about him anymore. So I go back, and this road that we were on the south side was a soybean field, north side's a big hay field, and there's brush and stuff down either side. Then there's a gap on either side where the tractors could go out in there. So I walked out on the north side of the hay field. Ken walked out on the south side in the soybean field, and we're sitting there. Well, I got caught short. Y'all know what caught short means? I have to go to the bathroom. So there was a little patch of wild plum trees. I walked around behind
It's kind of like a hedgerow.
Yeah, it's a hedgerow. I walked around behind that, started taking care of business, and I'm standing there, and I became aware of something literally breathing down my neck. Literally ruffling the fur, the hair on the back of my neck. I don't know if I got finished or not. I whirled around like this, and when I did, my shoulder and my elbow hit one right in the chest. There was a 7-footer had walked right up behind me, and he was sitting there literally breathing down my neck. I hit him. I didn't know what to do. He goes, like that at me. And he went this way, and I went this way, and we just about hit again doing the do-si-do. Ken's on the other side of the road, on the other side of the hedgerow. He hears this and whirls around and sees the dadgum thing running off. There was enough of a moon. And I'm running to the truck. Ken takes off running. There's a little patch of cherry trees there that he has to run past. As he was running past the cherry trees, I heard Ken's feet beating it. Now, so I was looking over there to see if that was another booger or what. And I see Ken just getting. As he passed those cherry trees, a second one stepped out and swatted him across the shoulder blades as Ken went by. Ken started hollering, and he caught about 3 more gears that I didn't know he had. and he got to the damn truck, and the damn women had locked the door and wouldn't let us in. Ken was about to tear the door off the side of my truck. He was about to claw his way through.
Flop, 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 flop.
Yeah. I grabbed my keys out, and thank God I had a remote control. I hit the remote control, unlocked the doors. We piled in. I fired that dude up, and we go tearing out of there. All right, quarter mile, and the road goes into the woods, and it curves. We get into the woods, the road starts curving, and all of a sudden, there's two big trees down across the road. One shoved down from the other side. They weren't there when we came in there an hour or so earlier. That's real common that they try to block you in. I had a big Tex brush guard on that thing, and I'm sitting there praying, dude, it's time for you to do what you're here for, protect my damn radiator. I let off of it just enough that rather than hitting the trunk of the first tree, I cut out into the limbs. I blew through that, and I cut real hard, and I hit the limbs, went through the treetop of the other tree, go hauling butt down the road and out of there. And
that ain't the only time that's ever happened. We're going to tell you another story that happened in Texas, too.
But anyway, that's type 2s. That's another way they like to count 2 on you. I mean, that's happened to us so many times. All right, here is, now.
These are our pictures.
Yeah, this is some of our pictures right here. Let me get over here so I can play with this. All right, you see the tree right here. What do you see right there? That's a face. See the eye and the mouth? He's up in that dadgum tree, hanging on to that tree. This right here might be a foot. Yeah, he's got a Don King spiky hairdo. And, yep. When we first came out and said that one of the first times that anybody ever told me about their habits, my grandfather told me that they sit up in the tree and watch the house. When we first came out and said that they climb trees, we were absolutely crucified in the Bigfoot community. And now it's accepted as general fact. But anyway, there that dude's up the tree. Now, this right here, this doesn't look like anything, but you see something right here. And look at here. This is an arm sticking out here.
That one ain't the good one.
That's not the good one. Now, you see this right here? This dude, this is a right profile. That's the eye, and it's in here. This one's got his hand on this one's back. All right, here is another one up here. See the rounded head? All right, here's his face. There's the eyebrows. There's his nose ridge right here. This one is the alpha male of this area.
See the side of the crest?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. This is the alpha female right in here. She's got his hand. This one right here is an interloper male. He's in there. We call them the gangbangers. Right. He's coming in here thinking that he's going to be able to lure Mama away from Big Daddy. What's happening is Big Daddy's turning around here. Probably what happened about 2 seconds after that picture was hit is Big Daddy tore down all that brush between him and Gangbanger there. There was probably a hell of a fight busted out. In fact, there was. And anyway, but there's 3 of them in there. There's actually, we saw some movement down in here. Yeah. Anyway. But like I said,
nobody's seen these pictures nowhere.
Right. Now, we can't, you can take pictures like that when you can see the stuff moving, and when in a still photo, you can't pick out it. That's what we call them blob squatches. But we know for a fact that they were in there. Now, how would you like to have that? That's what a type 2 looks like. And we don't have if any of you guys have, and now this right here was made for us by, there was a book that came out called Them and Us, and it was by an anthropologist, and he came out with the theory that Neanderthals actually were not near as human-like as we thought that they were. That all the stuff in the museums is wrong, and that they were much more brutal, much more scary looking. And I said, and I looked at it, I said, son of a gun. I said, but he showed them with vertical slit like cat eye pupils, and he showed them with a much more ape-like nose. I said, son of a gun. I said, you put round pupils on that son of a gun and give him some canine teeth and change the nose to more like a howler monkey or maybe a negroid type nose, and you'll have a type 2 Bigfoot. And so some guys good artists did those for us. And
Except they never got the eye quite right.
right, the eye is wrong. The pupils should be probably, much larger than that. Much larger.
Reason?
However,
Why? Come on, guys. Why would their eyes have less white? Come on. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am so proud
Yeah.
to listen to an audience that is smart.
yeah. But
That means they can see in the dark.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have very often seen them in this pose.
That's why we knew they had canines and they don't
Yeah.
have those block teeth.
Yeah.
I don't know where the block teeth come from.
Yeah.
I ain't
Here
figured
is
it out yet.
here's sort of what they look like standing up. And now this one over here on the right, that is a drawing of somebody made of a skunk ape. You see he's got his alligator lunchbox under his armpit there. He's had a hard day at the office and he's going home to mama. And but anyway, and this is typically the way we see them, except you see that leg right there? That knee would be bent. It wouldn't be locked like that. That's wrong. But you see the flowing hair and everything on it? That's pretty much right. All right, here's a type 2 knuckle walking, except they got it wrong. The knees should be bent and the butt should be down more. Another buddy of ours got this one over here on the right recently.
This
And
is one of the newer pictures.
yeah, this is a fairly new picture.
Probably a month or two old picture.
Yeah, this is the face of a juvenile looking out at us. And there's his mouth, his lips, there's his nose, and here's one, the brow ridge, and an eye, and other eyes over here. And of course, there's the top of his head.
And this was in the heat of the summer with
Yeah.
foliage thick. Look how
Right.
thick that is. He
Yeah.
found an opening in the trees, in the brush line, and was looking out at the guy who took the photo.
Right. All right. This is one our buddy Dan Rickey took. Dan is infamous for, if we can spot one hiding, Dan will go walk right up to the son of a gun and shake hands with it and, tell war stories. And Dan walked up on this one in a place that it's a place in Oklahoma that is absolutely one of the most spooky places and scary places that I've ever researched. And he spotted this son of a gun, or we spotted the eye. You see the eye shine here? He was turned more towards us. We spotted the eye shine, and we held the lights on him, and Dan walked right up to it with just an old time, just a cheap camera. It was a film camera, not even a digital, which actually, for taking booger shots, film cameras are better. And he set it so that he'd have a maximum depth of field, and cranked the flash up pretty good. Anyway, if you see here, I've sort of outlined the head here. Here's the shoulder. Here's the right eye. Here's the left eye shine. You see sort of the rough outline of the nose, and you can see the mouth right here.
Actually, guys, if you look, I don't know how well you can see it out there. Remember what we said about the pupil? It's solid.
Yeah, you won't see the whites of their eyes. But that one was sort of mad. He had his lips pursed like that. Normally there's a lot greater distance between the bottom of the nose and the lips. In fact, the distance from their eyes to the bottom of their nose is about the same from the bottom of their nose to their lips. But this one was PO'd, and he was sort of had his lips pursed.
They'll grin at you when they get
Yeah, they'll grin at you, or they'll bare their teeth
Don't
and growl
take
at
that
you.
as a friendly action.
Right. Exactly. All right, then there's a type 3, which, now, for years, I had the type 3 and the type 4, which I'll get to later, piled into the same group. But it didn't take me long to figure out that they were two totally distinct animals. Type 3 is a baboon-faced, snouted primate type hominid. The build and everything is identical to a type 2, but it has a baboon or canine-looking snout with clawed toes and possibly clawed fingers. They have plantigrade feet. In other words, the heel is on the ground when they're standing and when they're walking upright. But they have clawed toes. they're typified by something called the beast of seven shoots, which I'll show you a picture of it here in a minute. They could be a mutation of types 1 or 2 or both, or a genetic throwback. And back when white men came to this country in the 1600s and 1700s, they brought their European or white man's diseases. They wiped out most of the First Nations people. Most of the Native Americans died of smallpox, chickenpox, and measles. They also killed off most of the Bigfoot. And the ones that were left were in small pockets. So there was definitely probably inbreeding that happened amongst the isolated troops. And I think that this type 3 could be a throwback or leftover due to the inbreeding back in the probably the 1800s, 1900s. However, just as the First Nations people have gotten over that, and the ones that have survived are as immune to it as we are, same thing with the Bigfoot population. So they are recovering by leaps and bounds. That's one reason why we're seeing more and more of them, because there are more and more of them. And now, they are, however, the type 3s are regarded to be evil and considered more dangerous than types 1 and 2. They are by far the most rare of the Bigfoot that we investigate, that we come across, of any of the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or Dogman.
But they make up for it.
Yeah. And we have found them we've found them in Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, Bear, can you think? Tennessee, yeah, Kentucky. We found them in a few places, but they are.
I ain't looking for them, guys.
Yeah, he don't do them. No.
I am a.
All right, here is the famous beast of seven shoots, and this is in Seven Shoots Provincial Park in Quebec. And you can see here he's got a baboon type snout. You can see his eye arches. You can barely see his eyes. You can see he does have a prominent sagittal crest. Now, what he's got here, he's got a dog that he's killed. This is the dog's. This is one back leg. This is the other back leg, and the tail is tucked down, dropped between its legs. Here's the dog's ear, and probably the dog's snout right here. But he's caught him a dog, and he's toting him off. Of course, you can clearly see the arm here. And this is one of the best. Of course, you can see the whole body and everything. And this is one of the best. This is by far the best photograph of one of these that I know that exists.
Well, we found another one, but we misplaced it.
Yeah. All right. So here, now, don't look at that right now. Here is a track we found last winter in Oklahoma. Now, you guys, anybody that studied Meldrum and all that, they talk about a mid-tarsal break on their tracks, on the type 1. All right, right here you see the mid-tarsal break. Y'all see that? But you see 3 toes, probably a genetics, but it's definitely clawed toes. And you can see that's a big son of a gun. That's about a 17-inch track, 17, 18-inch track. I mean, that was a big son of a gun. Now, this guy tried to take the beast of seven shoots and enhance him a little bit. And he's got him sitting there looking like, oh, baby, how about let's get together tonight, you know.
That's one of them. There's one, dude.
Yeah, that's a type 3 dude. They got the eyes all wrong. His mouth is open. I'll go back and show you. You can see right here the mouth is open, and you can see his lower teeth and part of his tongue maybe, but he ain't smiling. He's glaring. He's got him all wrong. He's glaring at him like, "What the hell are you doing up there?" You know. And he's not giving him a. All right, here's a type 3. This is a more artist concepts of them, and I don't like either one of those very much, but the one on the right's a little bit more accurate. This one here is not too terribly close, but you still get a sort of an idea of what you would walk up into. All right, now this is Bear's favorite one. This is the one that Bear every time we go out, the son of a gun's trying to get one of these into the tent with him. And Tammy has run them off 2 or 3 times with a broom. We actually had one of these type fours walk right behind our tents one night and found the trap. And we got a guy's got a couple of good pictures of it. Unfortunately, he wouldn't let us have them. But he wouldn't even let us hold them. He holds them, and we can look at them. He will not even let us hold them.
And he never would have seen it if it hadn't been for us. We run
Exactly.
into that all the time.
Anyway, and that was the first and last time that we ever camped in that particular area. We will not be going back to that area. We go in there. Yeah, in a particular. All right, dogman, which is your canine or werewolf canine type. This thing is right out of your worst nightmare. People think that these things don't exist, but they do. I investigated my first sighting of one of these things in 1978 or 77. I recorded the first official report of one. I was probably the first researcher in the world to do it in 1984.
Wasn't it on the BFRO?
Yeah, it was posted on the BFR. They pulled it, and it's in their private database now.
Shows you how much the BFRO appreciates us.
Exactly. I have made dozens of reports to the BFRO before I figured it out.
What is BFRO?
Bigfoot Field Research Organization. That's the not finding Bigfoot people. Yeah. That's the not finding Bigfoot people. And they have about 15,000 sighting reports on their public database, and they have like 10 times more than that on their private database.
But you got to pay to get to that.
And I have, like I said, I have submitted dozens and dozens and dozens of reports to them, and only two of them are on their public website, the public database. Okay. Now, type 4s, usually 9 to 10 feet tall, but we have reliable reports of them 11 to 12 feet tall. They have digitigrade feet. When they're standing there, their heels are up off the ground, like a dog, like if you stood a dog up on its back leg or a goat. In fact, for some reason, in some areas, they're called goat men because of the way the hair and everything on their feet looks, and they have more like fur than hair.
Plus, they're also called lizard men.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the categories that nobody can lump them into.
Right. They have the real ones. There are a lot of pictures out there that are faked, that look like something out of Hollywood. And the real ones, though, that we've seen pictures of, that we have reliable eyewitness accounts, they have hunched backs and massive shoulders, almost like a type 1 booger, almost like the big male that I showed you there earlier on the same page with Patty. And they absolutely positively have clawed toes and fingers. And they have large upper and lower fangs or canines which protrude from their mouth even when it's closed. They have noticeable pointed ears like a Doberman Pinscher that's had his ears clipped, or like German Shepherds. They vary between as wide as a shepherd's ears with slightly rounded tips to pointed like a Doberman's ears. Most of the time when people see them, the ears are sort of laid back like they're pissed off, There's very few reports that have them where they're actually looking at something intently and the ears are up like a dog's ears. They are definitely a different species than the type 1, 2, or 3. The type 3 is, very different looking than the 1s and 2s. That's the ones I showed you earlier. But I believe the type 3s can interbreed with the 1s and 2s.
I think so too.
Yeah. All right.
They run together.
Yeah.
Why would they not run together if they can't do the wow thing?
And the type 4s do not run with the type 1s, 2s, or 3s. They are absolutely positively more evil and dangerous than type 1s, 2s, or 3s. They are probably not a primate or a hominid. They're something else.
We don't know
and if you want to...
That's why I don't do
the beast of land between the lakes is a type 4. How many of y'all have heard of the beast of land between the lakes?
And that's a booger.
That's a type 4.
Yes.
Absolutely, positively, both stories.
Everybody tried to discredit it.
Yeah, I have been investigating that since the 1980s. I know one of the law enforcement officers that was involved in it. We have a guy in our group that lives there and corroborated the story from a totally different angle. I've been to where it happened. In fact, you can get online and you can just do a search on Coonbo, Land Between the Lakes, and you'll see where I took a group this spring up there and took them to the places where the last two big murders happened. And Tom, did I take you up there? Alrighty. And explain to them.
Do what? Yeah. Summarize.
Yeah, I'll summarize it here in just a second.
And tell us what evil and dangerous means in your context.
That means they are more apt to attack you without much provocation.
The Choctaw, which is my tribe,
Yeah.
they call them the Nalusafalea.
My
That means long, dark, evil being.
My great grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee, and if she ever taught, when she went to tell us about it, she brought us outside the house, got us out in the backyard, away from everybody. I mean, so they couldn't hear. And she got down and she was looking around like she was scared, and
They don't even like talking about it.
They're the Keklakudla. They call them the Keklakudla. There's a Cherokee name for them, which means hairy savage or hairy cannibal.
Cannibal.
And now, in the Cherokee tradition, they believe that the regular Bigfoot, which they call Nununui, that they help protect us from the Keklakudla. And in the Cherokee lore, the Keklakudla, or the type 4s, live further back into the woods, into the more desolate places that the other Bigfoot do not live.
They're segregated.
Right.
So do they eat people or they eat themselves?
Hell yes, they eat people.
Do they
Yeah.
eat themselves too?
I
Don't know about that.
So they're carnivorous and eat people?
Yes, they are exclusively carnivorous.
Cannibal means eat your own species.
Right.
They're
Well, that's
not-
true, yeah.
Right.
You are correct. Yeah. They are exclusively carnivorous, whereas
I'd be happy if they ate themselves.
You
Whereas-
and me both.
type 1s and type 2s are
Especially when you find their tracks behind your tent.
Yeah. Type 1s and type 2s are definitely omnivorous. They eat more plant protein and stuff during the summer and early fall. And they slowly, as the food supply of vegetation and acorns and nuts and apples and
Fruits.
stuff, fruit, as that wanes during the fall, they switch over to eating more and more
Carnivorous.
animal protein.
They gotta have the meat.
Right. Now, unfortunately, the type 4s are much more common than the type 3s, but they are still, thank God, much, much less common than the types 1 or 2.
Now summarize Jan Montgomery's story.
All right, here is
That's the one. The first picture is
these
up there.
pictures. This picture here was the first one that was drawn as part of the police report of a murder that took place in 1982 of a family of 4 people. And that was
Summarize it.
all right, quick summary. A wealthy family had a really, really nice RV. There was an RV campground at the time in the north end of LBL, very close to the North Visitor Center.
Grand Rapids.
This is just south of Grand Rivers, Kentucky.
Grand Rivers, not Rapids. Yeah.
They pulled in there at about 3 o'clock, 3:30 or so in the afternoon. Mind you, this was 1982. It was a top of the line. It would be the equivalent of a Prevost or something nowadays. But it was a top of the line motor coach. These were very wealthy people. They backed into the spot. It just so happens there was nobody in that section of the RV campground then at that time of the year. And it was very, very early spring before it was still a little bit cold. Anyway, back then they still had to hand crank the leveling jacks. It was a man, a wife, a boy about 10 years old.
Yeah, he was older than the little girl.
10 or 11-year-old, yeah, 11-year-old, but 10 or 11-year-old boy and a 9-year-old little girl. The wife and the daughter were inside getting ready to set up to cook supper and everything. The father and the son were out and they were leveling the thing. The man was down on his down on his knees with the jack, leveling the front end of the RV. This thing here came up the RV slot, sort of backed in. You backed into the north side of the road. off the north side of the road. There's a big draw that goes down to the river, down to the Cumberland River.
Cumberland?
Yeah, it's on that's Cumberland side. Yeah,
Gotcha.
Cumberland River side, Lake Barkley side.
Yep.
Just on the east side of that RV spot. And this thing came up out of that draw, and by this time it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And mind you, this is in probably, I think it was very early March, late February. So it's getting dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Early, before the
Yes.
time change.
Right. This thing comes up, it comes around the left front corner of the RV. The man's down on his hands and knees. He grabs the guy and snatches his head right off. And that's the way even type 1s and type 2s kill people.
Remember the
And type
Bachner
3s.
story?
What?
Roosevelt story?
Yeah, the Ballman story from Teddy Roosevelt. He even described it the same way then. We have found old newspaper accounts going back all the way into 1830s of when people were attacked by them and they were killed the exact same way. The booger comes up, grabs, just snatches, grabs him by the shoulder and just here and just like that, the head goes flying. The next thing he did, he ripped out both of the guy's arms and threw them. The little boy takes off running, trying to get into the RV. He makes it to the door. He's got a hold of the door. The thing grabs him, tears him to shreds too. The mother is screaming and yelling. The thing tears through the outside door. The solid door was open, latched back. It tears through the screen door, gets in there, and that woman, adrenaline does amazing things. That woman put up a hell of a fight. Tore the inside of that damn RV all to pieces. She fought that thing so much she torn all of the flesh off the ends of her fingers. She had bare bones hanging out of her hands where she had been tearing at this thing. She obviously inflicted wounds on it. The thing was in that cramped RV, so I guess she had a little bit of an advantage, or not, well, she had no advantage, but it was handicapped someone. It did overpower her and tear her to shreds. Now, the law enforcement reports and talking to the people that I've been able to talk to would not tell what it did to the woman, although it said that it absolutely mutilated her. I mean, and literally tore her to shreds. All right. The little girl had run to the back of the RV and locked herself in the back bedroom. It tore the door open, got her, took her outside, and partially ate her. Drug her off down into the woods and either carried her body up or threw her body up into a tree 30 feet in the air. She was hanging in the crotch of a tree 30 feet off the ground. That tree still stands. I know where it is. I took Tom down there and showed him. And I was taken down there and shown where that was. And, what was the name of them? Don't know. I don't recall it off. I don't recall it off my head.
Tell about your ranger, buddy.
I have a friend who was a ranger there, who he and I grew up together. I've known him since I've known old enough to know anybody. Yeah, he was a ranger in the land between the lakes, and he and I grew up in the same church. His parents and my parents are friends. His grandparents and my grandparents were friends, and we went to the same schools together. He graduated a year ahead of me, and he worked on the Natchez Trace for a law enforcement ranger for a number of years, and then got transferred to land between the lakes.
No,
Teddy Roosevelt had a man,
wilderness hunter.
He had a man that worked for him that ran into something like this and told him the story about it. And Teddy Roosevelt recorded it in detail in one of his books.
The book was called The Wilderness Hunter.
Yeah.
And it was also in the Lake.
No, it happened up in Wyoming. No. Either
It was either Montana or Wyoming.
Montana or North Dakota. Montana or extreme western North Dakota. I think
They just had an
Montana or Idaho.
They just had an expedition that's tried to find that site just recently, this past summer.
I
don't know if
it's
they've
spelled
actually found
it's spelled B as in boy, BAUMAN. You can look it up. It's very easy to find.
All you have to do is Google search it.
Yeah.
M-A-N.
M-A-N. B-A-U-M-A-N. The Ballman. Bowman or Bowman story.
Put it in your cell phone right now. When you get
Yeah.
home, you can Google it.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt Bowman story.
It's in one of his books. Yep.
Do what?
About your Rangers.
Yeah, okay. Now, when a family, some people came riding by there at about a little bit after 4 o'clock and saw the body of the man laying there in front of the RV. The front was pointed out towards the main loop in the RV park. They see his torso laying there. They hauled ass out of there and didn't stop until they got into the town of Grand Rivers, and reported it to the Grand Rivers Police Department. Called the police. This is
Probably sheriff
this
department.
is before 911. The first people there on the scene were the Grand Rivers Police, followed closely by the county, followed closely by the Land Between the Lakes law enforcement rangers, rangers and stuff. They started, looking around. They found the boy was there, the wife was there, the husband's body was there. They found clothes in the closet for the little girl, but they didn't find the little girl, so they were wondering where she was. They went outside and started looking, and they found a blood trail going down through the woods and started following it. They got to a point where they lost it. I'm not going to tell the officer's name, but I know his name. There were 2 officers standing there. One of them had his Smokey Bear hat on, ranger hat on. And he's standing there, and they're shining their light down in this draw, looking around to see if they can see anything. Something starts dripping on his brim of his hat. And he looked up like this, and it got in his eyes. He said, "Well, dang," and he turned around, and his buddy, another law enforcement officer, standing behind him and shined his light over. He said, "Damn, you got blood all over your face. You hit a briar or a stick or something?" And he said, "No, it's dripping on me." And they looked up, and there was a girl's body way up there. And that's how they found the little, and that ruined that man's career. It tore him up so bad he never got over it. He still lives in the area. We know his name. He doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And he's having to deal with it.
Plus, he's been threatened.
Yeah. But
government knows. Uncle Sam knows these things.
Now, here's something you need to remember. A critical thing about this story is this happened right at dusky dark. If any of you are woodsmen or hunters or whatever, you know that late at night or in the afternoon, the thermals change. During the day, the sun heats the air goes up ridges and mountainsides and goes up. That's how gliders work. At dusk, the air starts cooling off, the air starts coming down and going down the slopes and hillsides and stuff, down into bottoms, down into creek beds and stuff like that. This happened right after the thermals had turned. This guy was slathered with canoe cologne. You remember back in the early 80s and 82, everybody wore your shirts buttoned down, big hairy chest and all these gold chains and everything, and lots of cologne. And the woman was a high maintenance woman, had all this stuff, and she had herself bathed down in Chanel or Estee Lauder or something like that. But he had on lots of cologne. And they do not like strong smells like that. That's probably why it came up there. It was probably just walking along the riverfront, the waterfront down below where that hollow goes out into the water, and probably smelled that very strong cologne and was aggravated by it. Came up through the draw and found the guy there. He said, "Oh, there's the source of that god-awful smell. I'll take care of that right now." There's that. He gets the kid, goes in there, and he finds the wife. The wife is covered up with stuff like that too. That incenses him even more. So he tears her up. And he
Plus,
says,
he was already in the bloodlust.
Exactly. He says, "So while I'm here, I'll get suffered."
Full predator mode.
Right. So now, I'll tell the other story later.
Oh, they probably got everything you don't want to prove,
yeah.
But they washed it away, man.
What happened after that? This is very close to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is the headquarters of the 101st Airborne Division. They shut down the north end of Land Between the Lakes.
Sure did.
They
Shut
put
it all down.
they put boats all out in the river on both the Kentucky Lake side and the Barkley Lake side, and in the canal connecting them. They put a wall-to-wall, I mean shoulder-to-shoulder line of people. They went back a few miles south and put a shoulder-to-shoulder wall of heavily armed men, literally from shoreline to shoreline across the Land Between the Lakes. The Land Between the Lakes is a huge, narrow peninsula.
It's separated by the Tennessee River on the west side and the Cumberland River on the east side.
Right. And there's a canal connects the two at the north end. So like I said, it's a very long, it's about a 40-mile long peninsula. They started moving north, and according to my friend, he said that the orders were, if it's brown, it's down. If it's brown and it moves, kill it. They killed everything. They actually found that one's lair in the hollow south, a big, deep hollow with a bunch of rocky crags and stuff in it, to the south of the campground. The reports were, and I've been able to corroborate this from 2 independent sources, when they finally killed the thing, it was so big that they couldn't carry it up out of the hollow. They brought a 1.5 deuce up. Y'all know what a 1.5 deuce is? 2.5 ton truck. Big military truck that's got dual wheels on the back. Most of them have a big winch on them. They ran the winch cable off down into the draw and cabled onto the thing and used the winch on the 1.5 deuce to pull the thing back up out of the draw. And supposedly it was close to 12 feet tall. And I don't know how much it weighed, but it weighed a bunch. Now, nothing else happened. Things were quiet there until 2002.
Listen to this one.
20 years. Now, we have a guy in our group that lives right across the river he lives right across Barkley Lake from this.
On the Cumberland River side.
We've been researching with him since 99, 2000.
About 2000.
Yeah, about 2000. All right. And my friend is still working down there. I'm working with the Boy Scouts then. And we're getting ready to go to Philmont Scout Ranch, and we wanted to do some hiking and stuff. So I called my buddy up. Now at this time, I didn't even know about the first one. My buddy, my law enforcement ranger friend, had not told me about the first thing that happened in '82. So I called him up and I said, hey, I want to bring our troop up here and we want to camp out and do some hiking. We want to hike up the Trace Trail, which goes right up through the middle of the thing. And he said, okay. He said, I suggest that y'all start out and you camp down the Piney Campground, which is further south. He said, do not go north of the elk and buffalo enclosure, which is
Kentucky side.
Which is just barely into the Kentucky side, the north side. He said, don't go anywhere north of there. And I said, well, okay. Why? He said, when are you coming? And I told him what date. And he said, okay, I'll be there. So he did. And we were setting up camp there on Friday afternoon, and he came by and found us. And he said, well, hey, he said, are you going to, he said, do you have to be with me? He said, you want to visit or talk or whatever? I said, sure, because I hadn't seen him in a while. So he came back the next morning, and he said, well, throw your stuff in there. And he said, we'll ride around some, and I'll get you, we'll circle around, and I'll get you back with your group. All right, because there was 2 more adults that were there. That was a requirement that you had to have 2 adults with the Boy Scouts on anytime you were out on a camp out of the trail. All right, that'll work. So I got in the car with my buddy. Off we go, riding. He says, well, I wanted to tell you something about what happened up here. And he said, if you're planning on coming up here very much, because I told him we were planning on doing some more practice hikes, and he said, you need to know about what's going on up here. And he knew that I researched Bigfoot, but he and I had never talked about it. And he said, we had a guy get killed up here by a wolf man last year. I said, oh, come on. And he says, no.
He said wolf man.
He said wolf man.
Yeah, Tim was Bigfoot.
Yeah. And well, I knew that these type 4s existed but I didn't want to just admit it to him. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I'm going to take you there and show you what happened. So he took me up to the place, and it was a bow hunter. The guy had been in there bow hunting for deer, and he pitched a tent. Now, in Land Between the Lakes, you can camp anywhere you want. You can camp. You can pull off the side of the road and camp. You can drive out in the edge of a field and camp. And he drove off one of the back roads and drove out into a field and parked and pitched his tent. And he was back there bow hunting. He had told his wife he was going to be back Sunday night. Well, he didn't come back Sunday night, and she thought he'd maybe shot a deer and had to track it, which commonly happens bow hunting. And they figured he would show up late in the night or by Monday morning. Monday morning came, he wasn't there. So about 7 o'clock, she called the ranger station. Said her husband hadn't come in, and my buddy was in there, and they were having their shift start briefing. One of the other guys took the call, and you have to fill out a deal that says what color your vehicle is, what your tag number is. And he came in there and he said, hey, got a guy that didn't come back, is missing in here somewhere. He's driving a white Nissan pickup truck, tag number, yada, yada, yada. And y'all said, oh, yeah, I know where he is. He's camped right up there off of the old trail road, the old Trail Ridge Road. Well, okay, let's go up there. So they go riding up there, and they ride up there, pull off into where he is, and there's his tent, and there's his truck. The tent is torn literally to shreds. The guy's belongings are scattered around. Off over here to the side is the guy's bow, and it's broken. It's broken, and the limbs are broken on it. The quiver is laying there with all of the arrows still in the quiver, so the guy never got a chance to get a shot off. They said there was a very easy to follow drag mark leading going out to the southeast. And so my friend, and the other ranger started following this drag. They followed it for 1.5 miles and came out on a little field out in the woods, a little clearing. And they started finding articles of clothing and stuff, and occasionally they would find something like a finger or something like that. They came out into a clearing, and there's the guy's mutilated and fed-on body laying there, and some of his clothes thrown up in a tree. And they determined that one was probably fed on by more than one. That guy was fed on by more than one of these things. It probably was hunting and killed the guy and took it to its family. And they ate what they wanted and left the rest. And there was a huge big deal. When he took me down there, you could still see the road was still torn all to pieces from all the traffic that had been in there. Now, my buddy told me that, like I said, my friend told me this. Later on, our buddy Mark, he starts telling us this. We're up there, and he starts telling us, and I was amazed that he knew anything about it. So I played dumb. I said, you know where this happened? He said, well, yeah, I can take you right there to it. I said, well, let's go. So we jumped in my truck, and off we went. Mark took me to the exact place.
See, local people talk about it.
Yeah.
Locals talk about it.
So that was
government suppressed it.
Right. Now, we have done a lot of research and finally found that guy's name. We've got his name, but we can't not release it. And supposedly he was killed, it was just listed as an animal attack was the cause of death.
Which most casualties of this are.
Yeah.
It's usually the bear.
Here's another picture of just artwork of a type 4. There now here's one that was a photograph. This is a blown up detail of a much larger picture. And this thing was crossing, that's a fence right there. It's crossing a fence is what it's doing. Now, I personally do not think that that's a real dog man. I think that's a hoax. And the reason being, you see the shoulders on this? This is a very accurate artist rendering of what we have what we have seen other pictures of. This is very accurate rendering of what they look like. You see,
I don't want to see.
Now, we were camped in the north end. We decided we're going to go see if we can find one of these and get a picture of it.
No, you did. I wanted to find the Bigfoot in the north end.
Well, we had
Which
never
they
been
were
up
there.
there. So we go up there and we camp in the north end. First thing weird that happened, we had wolves show up.
Yep.
Red wolves showed up, tried to lure my dog out of camp. Tried to lure my German Shepherd up there to them. And if any of y'all have read Call of the Wild, they use the exact same tactics as what he described in Call of the Wild. It was absolutely amazing. All right, that happened 2 nights in a row. Then we had a quiet night. And then the next night,
A lot of people left.
yeah, a lot of people left. It was you and me and
Dan and Vicky.
and Dan and Vicky and there was that guy that moved up there with us.
Maureen and Leonard.
Maureen Leonard.
We had about 20 people there at
Leonard-
this out, and then everybody
Yeah.
left, but there was only 6 left
Right.
with 3 tents.
Leonard had insomnia, and he would sit out by the fire most of the night smoking cigarettes, and he had a Canon quick shot camera, film camera, and anytime something moved or he heard the slightest little rustle or something, he'd pull that camera up and he'd shoot 2 or 3 pictures.
Yep.
He'd burn 4 or 5 rolls of film every time we went out, just shooting pictures towards stuff that he would hear out there in the dark at night. All right, he heard something coming down the hill right behind Bear's tent. And he sat there, and he's no further than here to the corner right there. Maybe, actually, no further here to that bright light right there.
Right.
And he's sitting there, and he hears steps, and he looks, and it's like Bear's tent's right there, my tent's like right here. And there's a big oak tree right beside my tent. And I have my German Shepherd buddy in the tent with me. All right. Leonard hears footsteps going up there. He fired his camera once, and he absolutely could not believe what he saw. And what he saw was, what he saw was this right here, except he saw the right side of it. And he quickly shot another one. And by this time, all it did is it was walking like this, and it turned and it bared its teeth at him, and it ran in behind that oak tree that was right beside my tent. I spoil my dogs. I have a cot, and my dogs have a cot. Buddy was on his cot. Now, the dog cot, it's only about that far off the ground. Buddy was on his cot. He never made a sound. All of a sudden, he jumped up and trying to start burrowing under my cot. Wakes me up. Damn it, buddy, what are you doing? I start trying to pull him out. I was wrestling him, and I couldn't get him out from under my cot. And he's waddling around and carrying on and whining. I said, well, all right then, just lay your ass down and just be still. And he hunkered down under there and didn't make a sound, didn't move. I went back to sleep. About that time, I see a flash, and I said, oh, God, Leonard's out there shooting pictures again. And then I thought I heard some movement outside my tent, and I saw 2 more flashes. Next morning, daylight, Leonard's gone. He goes hauling ass into the nearest little old town looking for a pharmacy or someplace to get those pictures
One
developed.
of those photo finish places.
Right, back when you had. By the time we get our breakfast eaten, here comes Leonard back. Y'all ain't gonna believe this. You ain't gonna believe this. He had nice glossies. The first one, you could see something in it. The second one, he had a perfect full profile of that sun in this position right here. You could see his hands, you could see the claws. Their hands look like raccoon hands, but with big claws on the tips. That's what's it. Knobby knuckles. Big, huge hands. You could see both of his hands. He was like this. And he had his teeth bared at Leonard. The next shot, the third shot, he was behind the oak tree next to my tent, and he was looking out at Leonard. Leonard shot him, and flashed his eyes. He turned around and hauled butt up the hill behind my tent. The fourth shot, you can see him across the back, and you can see what huge, massive muscles he's got on his back. In the fifth shot, he was just nothing but just a dark smudge on the film. All right. I'm like, yeah. I figured he might have pulled something, or I didn't know. We were starting to tear the camp down. I go up
We
there,
was all leaving.
and I walked around there, started to pull the tent pegs up, and my God, there were the tracks right there at the corner of my tent. And I looked, and the tracks went right up the hill. The hillside was covered with that little short green carpet moss, and everywhere that son of a gun stepped, it tore that
Those
that
claws
moss. Those
were like
claws tore
razors.
through that moss.
Oh, wow. It
Yeah.
scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, and we backtracked them, and we found where it came down the hill, and we found where it walked right behind Bear's tent.
Yeah, nothing but a piece of fabric between
Yeah.
me and it.
Yep.
Too many.
I don't
And
know.
too many people and too vigilant.
Yeah.
Because Leonard was sitting there.
Yeah.
Yep.
They do not actually, a camera flash is a much better deterrent to them and much better protection than a gun.
Yes. It
Much
blinds them.
better. Or a real strong spotlight or flashlight. We tell everybody that goes with us, bring you a good flashlight with a minimum of 700 lumens of illumination.
Flashlights and spotlights have
Yeah.
saved my ass.
Yeah,
I'm
many
not lying.
times, many
Literally.
times. Or I used to have I still got it. I had Olympus, real nice pro grade Olympus camera with a big tater masher. We call it big potato masher flash, and I flashed that thing right in the faces of several of them and stopped them. I mean, they'd be charging at me, coming at me at 30, 40 miles an hour, and I hit them a couple of times with that thing, and they'll slam on the brakes, throw their arm up, scream 3 or 4 times, and turn around and go back the other way.
Kind of like burning their eyes.
Yeah.
There's
But-
a product called a tactical flashlight that they're now saying recommending people carry. And basically, it's a very bright flashlight that has a flashing mode.
Right. The one I carry has a strobe mode also. Yeah, they do not like that either. But we recommend a minimum of 700 lumens to stop one.
See, when they go in nocturnal mode,
Yeah.
and then you hit them dead in the eyes, it's like we're wearing we're looking through a night vision goggles, and somebody hits you with a flashlight, it'll burn your eyes.
Yeah. Now,
I've knocked one down on his feet at Lake of the Pines in Texas that was charging us.
Yeah.
It was the only thing that saved my life.
Yeah.
How much gun power, how much firepower does it take to stop them? These guys, these violent people went through, and they got them. They must have massive firepower.
that's the thing. I know for a fact they've been killed with M14s, which is a 308 or 7.62 by 51. I know they've been killed by massed fire out of M16s. I know that they've been killed with 300 Winchester Magnums. I know they've been killed by 6 or 7 slowly killed, wounded, and they went off and they died later. 6 or 7 shots with 69 caliber muskets. We've got a
This is
an
none of
accurate
us
account.
doing the shooting.
yeah, none of us.
Deer rifles enough.
Yeah, deer rifle. Yeah, I know the one that was killed with one shot with a 270 that just happened to be a lucky shot, and that was out in Colorado. I've investigated.
But
that
we've
one.
never recovered the bodies, get it?
Right. They always drag off their dead,
Yep.
or either the government gets them.
How is it that these people that say we need to kill one are gonna do it if they're not in the military? How can you be out there and shoot one and kill it? You're gonna bring all the rest of them to find you.
Yes,
Exactly.
sir.
Right?
Yes,
Exactly.
sir.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
And don't assume
No.
the one you see is the only one.
Exactly.
That's another big fallacy and myth and lie.
Yeah.
The one you see is distracting you from the one that's slipping up on you.
Exactly.
I promise you.
Most of the time, and that's not just dogs, man. That's all of them.
Because they're not going to take it on themselves to do this as an independent action.
Now,
Remember what we said earlier about counting coup? The only way you can carry that honor or that acclaim is if it's witnessed.
Now,
You get what I'm saying?
they actually,
They run together, guys. They run together.
we have a guy in our group that was a deputy sheriff over in the county in Mississippi, the next county south of Memphis, Tennessee for years. Yep. And later on, he was a deputy sheriff in Sevier County, Tennessee, which is where Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, Dollywood, and all that is.
Armstrong Corner named for him.
Yeah, we have several places named after him. Anyway, he asked me one time to come up and talk to some rangers in Smoky Mountain National Park.
Up there at Gatlinburg.
This is up there past Gatlinburg. So I go up there and he wanted me
Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Talk to the rangers at the Cage Cove campground in Smoky Mountain National Park. I get up there and this lady, she's like a lieutenant or something like that. She's a head ranger, and she said, I told her my credentials and everything, and James had highly recommended me. And she said, well, what's going on here? And she said, we got a gang of them streaking the campground. Well, I said, they're all streaking. They ain't got no clothes. She said,
right.
And she said, no, let me tell you what they do. She said about 2 or 3 times a month, she said they show up about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, about the time the place starts getting quiet. And we'll hear a bunch of grumbling and stuff up in the woods, and said all of a sudden one of them will come hauling ass through the campground, slapping dumpsters, slapping the sides of RVs and crap like that. And they got a thing out there, a rack where you get maps and stuff like that, and you can pay your money in when you come in camp, slapping that. And they run all the way through the campground, and said about the time the first one gets over there, here comes the next one. So there's 3 or 4 of them come through there like that. And then they'll hear them over there. You know,
That's how they talk.
They sound like samurais talking, or like the Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian.
And they'll hear them off over there, and in a minute, here they come back. And she said when they come back, sometimes they'll hear them.
Oh, they do laugh.
They laugh. They'll hear them laughing.
It's kind of a slow laugh.
Yeah. And we've heard them laugh a bunch of times, but anyway.
I mean that. They'll laugh at you.
And
they were all bigger than hell.
See,
she told bitches laughing at me.
What the lady was worried about is she liked the things, and they had some really bothering campers up on the Appalachian Trail south of Klingman's Dome. And they brought the military in there and took care of them.
Eradicated them. And
James clued me into that. I already knew about that because James had told me about it. And I said, yeah, I'd heard about that. And they cordoned off a very large area, used all the local law enforcement to control the roads and access to the area, and brought in a National Guard unit and a bunch of special forces, and had a training exercise up there on the mountains. Up
under
there
the pretense
up at the northernmost campground in the Smoky Mountain National Park, they brought in some refrigerated trailers. And what happened after that, I don't know, but I can imagine. All I know is that they don't have problems with the boogers up there anymore. But she knew about this, and she didn't want her boogers at Cage Cove being killed or being shot at. So she wanted to know if they were dangerous doing that. I said, what you got? I said, is what we call the gangbangers. I said, it's a bunch of juvenile Bigfoot, and they're daring each other. They're counting coup. I said, they're over, ugh, you ain't got a hair on your ass if you don't run down there and walk the side of that Winnebago.
I see it happening. I mean, really, I'm telling you.
Yeah. They're daring each other, and they run through there, and they raise Cain, and then here they come back. And so she told me, I said, well, do you have any idea where they come from, where they go to? She said, yeah. So they do this when they're passing through here. So they come from out here to the south. When they do this, she said, they go up there on Townsend Mountain. If you get on that, she told me the road. She said, you go up, and right there's a big draw right underneath some big bluffs, about halfway up. And that's where they hang out. So I have my kids with me. My kids been following me around this stuff. Followed me around for a while.
Actually, his son is one of our newer outlaws.
These are type 2s, yes. So we go up there and we found them. Now, they didn't want to mess with us, but we knew they were there. We had heard a few little things. They had some small responses to our calls, and I'd make a call and I'd hear a wood knock off in the distance or a whistle or something. But they never did show themselves to us, although I was probably just too dumb to see them.
How dangerous are the type 1s, the type 2s?
The type 1s are
the type 4s are awful. You described them one before, so how dangerous are they?
Actually, there's probably a lot more people killed by type 2s than all the rest of them put together.
Because they're more numerous.
Yeah, they're way more numerous. There are a few people killed by type 1s, but not that many.
And how does that happen? They piss them off or something? Or they
Yeah, piss them off
Chances
accidentally
are,
or
98%
take a
of
shot
the
at them.
time it's because of human intervention.
Right.
I'm telling you.
It's because of stupid people.
Oh,
Plus,
they'll
they're-
do
they're
everything
in-
they can to back you off.
Something you have to remember around these things, even the ones that you're familiar with and that they're familiar with you, they're just like we are. They can have bad days and good days. They could have stepped on somebody's trap and got their foot caught in a trap. They could have an abscessed tooth and having trouble eating and they're hungry. They could have been sick. They could have just had their ass whipped and been thrown out of the troop by an alpha or something, a new alpha that moved in. You don't know what's happened. They have individual life stories just like we do. We see some of them that have scarred up faces and stuff.
Yep.
I mean, you can tell that they've been fighting and
We've seen
stuff.
one-eyed Bigfoot before in Oklahoma. One that lost his left eye.
And
We've seen them crippled hands,
Right.
crippled feet, tracks.
it's real common to see them with their little toe broken out straight out to the side. Find a
Right.
track with a toe out to the side where they've been running through the woods and hang that toe on something.
Well, just think about it, running through the woods.
Yeah. Let me get on to the last one. All right, the type 5 is a little people, and we know very little about the little people.
Let's skip it. Look at your time.
Yeah.
Tom's 2 hours has done flown the coop.
Holy moly. All right, this one's going to go fast. We got no idea. They're around 4 feet tall, often reported 3 feet. We got no idea of their range, distribution, or population, but believe it or not, these are often reported seen in urban areas. We know they have a reputation for being cannibals.
By that you mean carnivorous? Or
Yeah, carnivorous, excuse
Or
me.
eat people eat?
Or cannibalistic to people.
Well,
They are-
eat humans.
They what?
They eat humans?
Yes, they have a strong reputation of eating humans. Say what? Don't know about that, but they have a among the
I don't
First
look for
Nations
little people. I'm looking for
among the
something
Native
taller.
Americans, they have a very strong reputation of killing and eating people. They're very strong for their size, and 2 or 3 of them can drag off a full-grown man and have him for dinner. They're very secretive. They're extremely quick. They're mischievous, ill-tempered, and very pugnacious, which means they're combative and always got a chip on their shoulder. And they might be our version of the orang pendek of Sumatra. And
We call them the gremlins.
yeah, there's a picture of one eating something. The pictures that I have seen of them, that I've really had a hard time finding them, they vary tremendously from individual to individual and how they look.
First Nation people tell me they look like a miniature patty.
Here's one. Here's a picture.
They stand anywhere from 3 feet tall to 12 inches. I've
Here-
never seen one.
Here is, we got a lady in our group, Judy Klein, and she gets the credit for this. This is an investigation that was going on here just a month or so ago up in northern Minnesota. And she was looking at the pictures and spotted this right here. And she zoomed in on it, and look here what we got.
That's still.
We got a little head sticking up there, there's a nose, eye. And that's what,
Rolling.
anyway, there you go. All right, we got a type 6, some people call it, and I call it the none of the above. The none of the above category, excuse me. They include,
I don't believe in types.
skinwalkers, wendigo, janoska, gugway, shapeshifters, Jersey devils, mothman, deer woman, thunderbirds, chupacabra, Loch Ness types like the chimp, ex-wives, ex-mother-in-laws, and quite a few other horrendous creatures.
Yep. Look,
All right.
how you want
And
to do this, Tom?
here's some pictures, and now I want to show you guys this. This is in one of my research areas. I had been going in there in response to reports from hunters that were getting run out of the area. And I'd made several trips in there calling them, and these things gave me the creeps majorly. They would never show themselves. The only way we ever saw any of them was through night vision scopes. And they were very, very, very creepy. I mean, that place is one of the wooliest places I've ever been. Been down there about 2 or 3 times. My son and I came back down there one day. There were 3 trees like this. That's a. My son is 6 feet tall. That thing's broken off about 18 inches above his head. That tree where it's sheared off is over 1 foot in diameter. What in the world? This gives you an idea of the strength of them. That they can twist off trees that large, that high up. Gives you an idea of the upper body strength. There were 3 of these trees done like this in a row, thrown down across the road going in there. So I took pictures of it. All right. We know that they do certain formations and they don't like it when we mess with them. So I wanted to give them a message that I was going to go in there when I wanted to go in there.
I recommend y'all don't do this.
So there was 3 other researchers with Clint now. There were 5 of us plus Bo. So we walked up there about where my son is standing, and we peed all over that snag right there. Peed a little bit on the log, but mostly we peed up and down as high as we could get onto that snag. And Bo got in here and did his part too. All right.
Oh, you ain't gonna believe what happened.
I come back a week later. That's what I found. That's the snag. You can see claw marks and tooth marks in that wood. That thing came in there and found it, and it threw a fit.
It was a territorial marker until violated.
Right. We desecrated his territorial marker. I came back about a week later, a few days after that, to see if it changed any, and it hadn't. Here's the second time I went down there. But like I said, that thing tore that all to pieces.
How much time we're allowed
Now,
in here? Really?
You know, we have people about 11.
Would everybody like to take a 15-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Here.
Well, let me ask, how much more do you have?
I'm getting, yeah. But anyway, as far as the strength, had a guy, I personally know a guy, in fact, I rescued him, was being chased by one. He was being chased out of the deer hunter in my hunting club, was being chased out of the woods. And I rescued his ass, got him into my truck, and got him out of there away from the boogers. There's a long story, but I'm not going to tell it. He was talking about, we went back the next day to retrieve his stuff. He came running up to my truck in 18-degree weather with nothing but his hunting boots on and his shorts, his underwear, and that's it, and his rifle. He had been running so hard for so long that he had gotten hot, and he just started shucking his gear. And I said, Roger, why the hell didn't you shoot at the damn thing? You got a 7mm Magnum. He said there was 2 of them, and he said the size of the thing, there's no way I could have stopped both of them. He said they threw, he said I stopped, and he told me this one particular holler. He said I couldn't go any further. He said the rocks kept getting bigger and bigger, and they threw one the size of a suitcase at me. So a guy drew that for us. We went down there, and I found the rock. We found the rocks, found all his stuff. That rock weighed 370-something pounds. I found where it had been pulled off up out of the ground, and found where it had hit the ground, and it was 63 feet. It had thrown that rock 63 feet. And, yeah. All right. Now, we got some other hair-raising stories if you got time.
No. You took all that up talking about tapes.
Anyway, let's play, we can tell. How much time did you say we have, Steve?
Well, you can still do it. I have a question for you, though.
Yeah.
The werewolf, were your photos, what happened to those photos?
He still got them as far as I know. He would never let us hold them. He held on to him
He wouldn't let us hold.
and would not let us hold him in our hands. He held on to him while we looked at him. And the guy was an alcoholic already, and his wife died of cancer, and he's sort of fallen off the deep end, and we don't even know where he is anymore.
But that ain't the only time. We filmed using a researcher's thermal out of Orlando, Florida. He had driven all the way up to northwestern Alabama, and we was able to utilize his thermal. One thing we hadn't had a chance to mention to those who have no idea nothing about us, due to the fact that we grew up with these things in our backyard, grew up with them, we was able to hear them every evening or periodically when they're in the area. And when they would make certain calls, we learned to duplicate those calls, and we would get reactions from these things. So now we have taken these calls, me and Tim, and we're not saying we're the only ones because we know better than that. We know there's other people across the North American continent who knows more about these things than they are talking about. Chances are they came on the internet and somebody who didn't know dipshit probably run them out of the country saying, oh, you're ignorant, you're stupid, you're crazy. Because, see, they tried that with me and Tim. Me and Tim never run. We stood behind everything. I wish you'd go to the first list. You know what I'm talking about? The list of our first, Tim.
Yeah.
On the pinpoint.
Oh, here we go. Right here.
Read this.
Can you give us a sample of the call?
No. Tell you why.
Right.
I'll tell you why. I don't want the guilt of somebody ignorantly using it and something happened to them.
The call that Bobo uses on not finding Bigfoot, they got from me. They had a girl that they got in our group as a plant, and she recorded me doing that call. And,
Nope.
But she
orchestrated that call.
She asked me if I would demonstrate my calls for her, and she said, I just want to learn them for myself. And I thought, I don't know, Bear. I got Bear off the side. I said, Bear, I don't trust that girl. And he said, well, I don't either. I said, well, the only call I'm going to show her is the little locator call that anybody that's been out there any time at all has heard the boogers make them. And so that little call, that whoop call that you hear Bobo making,
and then
they got that from me. Yeah.
Well, all we did that day, because when we realized that she didn't need to know this call, we basically just fabricated a call. And what is anybody who sees this video from this point forward will say we're fabricating this story, but we're not. We made up a call on the spur of the moment, and that same damn call has been used on Monster Quest by the all-female crew. This same damn call has been used by Don Keaton when he did the Ohio Grassman episode of Monster Quest. This same two-tone call is used every time you watch Finding Bigfoot. And it blowed our minds that me and Tim decided to use an abbreviated call that now is recognized as a normal call. But nobody wants to hear because it sounds like sour apples coming from us. Think about it. How come they're not having success with this call? And I'll tell you why. When this call is first used, talking about the two-syllable whoop, whoop, that's all we talk. But what happens is a immature gangbanger, one that's not alpha stage or sexually mature enough to know what's going on, they will respond to a two-syllable whoop call. Now you've got so many people across the North American continent who they go out on these drunk tears, and want to go partying in the woods. They drink enough beer, the first thing they do, hey, let's do that call. And some of them get answers. But it does not take an actual Bigfoot long to figure out that, you jumped the gun on that one, dude. Now, if we did the real call, they'd come to us. and they still do. I did one 3 weeks ago on a mountain in Arizona, and with Brenda Harvey Harris from Bigfoot Seekers. She is an outlaw too, and that's the first time they've ever heard our call used, and her Bigfoot responded to it. In, sir?
Type twos or type one?
Type twos.
Those are type 2s out there.
No type threes or type fours?
No, sir. That's why I don't do these other things.
We don't even.
And see, here's the deal about that. If you're out there in the woods as much as you read all of these people who call themselves so-called Bigfoot researchers, if they're in the damn woods, they're going to know them others are out there, because if you're in the woods long enough, you're going to see these other things. And look, I'll say this in front of everybody, and I've never done this anywhere, and Tim knows this. I know this is Munful, what's the group? I know you guys are
UPARS.
yeah. But the deal is, the first ghost I saw was Bigfoot, and I will not brag about it. I seen it.
He said it wasn't a Bigfoot. We were out Bigfooting, and he saw a ghost, a real ghost.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the guy who was sitting in the truck behind me, looking over my left shoulder, I never would have said a word about it. Because what had happened, we'd been up through LBL, Land Between the Lakes, this particular time. My wife was in the truck with us. She's sitting right over there. And we had been all over Land Between the Lakes, and we run through a bank of fog. I guess y'all guys are sitting here if you know more about ghosts than I do, because I don't do ghosts. I don't do nothing I can't punch in the damn nose. And I can't punch no ghost in the nose. But we went through a bank of fog. We was coming to this stop sign, and I saw coming from the left side of the road displacement of the fog, like someone was walking through it. And then all of a sudden, this upper body from the waist up materialized. And I just automatically, I hit my brakes way before the stop sign. Tim and them was behind me. And they was all, what the hell did Bear stop for? And I yelled in the truck, I said, did y'all see that? And of course, Tammy and none of them was paying any attention. They was talking or something. But Rob Roy was behind me in the back seat looking over my left shoulder. And he said, what, that man that just walked across the road? I said, shit. Well, I guess I didn't. I said, and I still didn't believe it. I said, Robbie, which way was he walking, left to right or right to left? He said he walked from the left side of the road to the right side of the road. I still couldn't believe it. I said, what was he wearing? He said he was wearing an old brown wool jacket. I like to drop my teeth because he described exactly what I just saw. And that was the first ghost I've ever seen. And that was, how many years ago? 3 or 4?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I'm 58 years old, and I don't believe in ghosts. But I also know, too, I don't like doing werewolves or type all these other things. If you're out in the woods enough, you're going to run into these things. But everybody else, and this is what tickles the hell out of me, y'all read a Bigfoot book or you look at these people that's doing this, if they ain't got a decent sized tan on their body, they're full of shit. Because where are you going to find a Bigfoot? Is it in the house or is it in the woods? I'm not being ugly here, guys. I'm just telling it like it is.
Let me run through
Am
this.
I wrong, Gunner?
Let me run through this list. This is a list, and I don't mean to be bragging. Y'all don't take this the wrong way, but this is things, discoveries that about Bigfoot that Bear and I have made that we were the very first to reveal.
Together.
That we were the first to reveal, and we have taken ungodly amounts of ridicule and criticism for this. But now every bit of this is accepted as normal Bigfoot behavior. Number one, they can be successfully called. They travel quadrupedally and bipedally. They climb trees and use sentinel trees. In other words, they'll have blinds up in trees where they can sit comfortably for hours at a time and watch what's going on.
Plus, they're also enveloping the troop and watching the troop.
Right. There are different types of Bigfoot and related cryptids. They count coup. They organize hunts for prey, very organized hunts. They use infrasound, which is the sound frequencies below 20 hertz, below the range of human hearing.
We can't hear it.
They use infrasound as communication and as a weapon.
How does it hurt you?
Tell them.
By it causes resonations in different organs of your body, your inner ear, your eyeballs, your internal organs, and it can make you extremely sick. Now, I started researching infrasound in the lab in 1981.
Through NASA.
When I was working for the government, yeah. In one of NASA's big labs, we were doing vibration analysis testing, and we tested all the way down to a half a hertz, and we were doing a lot of earthquake simulations. Like we were testing a lot of gear for your San Onofre nuclear plant. Actually, it's south of here. And a bunch of other nuclear plants. And earthquakes have a range of 0 to 35 hertz. And so we were exciting the frequencies in the infrasound range. I started noticing that people that would stand out there by the shake tables when we were doing a high-level test would get sick. They'd either get anxious and anxiety and start getting the creeps, or they'd get sick to their stomach, or they would get terrible headaches, or they would get diarrhea, or I mean, there's a whole range of effects. It depended on the person. And so I thought, well, heck, this is the same kind of symptoms that I'm seeing out in the field researching Bigfoot. And so I started looking for a way to record this in the field. Well, a company called Audio Technica, any of you guys that are audio freaks, they make very high-end microphones, and they make a microphone specifically for infrasound, except even in the 80s they cost $1,800, and I didn't have $1,800 to spread, so I built my own Mylar film infrasound microphone using micro accelerometers that I was able to borrow out of the lab and signal conditioners and stuff. And it was a very cumbersome deal, and it was very susceptible with wind, but I went out and recorded boogers in the field. And I found out they were using infrasound bursts on us. And when they would do it, it strongly affected some of us researchers. Kelly Mattingly was one of them. She would actually go into anaphylactic shock, and it would take her a day or so to get over it. And
we'd all be standing there too. It didn't affect everybody.
Yeah, and some people could actually hear it. I hear really good in the low frequencies, and I could hear some of the upper end of the infrasound. And it would sort of sound like sort of a
we describe it as a didgeridoo, the ones from Australia.
They do sweeps up and down the scale, and we eventually over the years I figured out that the ones that we were able to record the best were the juveniles, because their voice hasn't matured just like a human.
Whales and elephants do this too.
Yes, sir.
And tigers and turkeys. There's a bunch of animals that
Did you also look at the ultrasound going higher than
Yes, we have. And
and here's another thing real quick before he gets into it. Ultrasound, insects will only cease and quit at one, like you hit a light switch. But if you look it up on the internet or anywhere, insects only hear in the ultrasonic range. So that's also showing us that their hearing and their speaking frequencies are in ranges that we as humans cannot hear.
We have discovered that you can generate an infrasound type effect by using two slightly off frequency focused ultrasound beams that vary frequency back and forth a little bit, and you can actually, if you do it right, you can create, and you do it fast enough, you can create infrasound type effects.
Yeah, that's called a beat.
Yep.
B-A-T.
Right.
And see, that just happened with the embassy guys from Cuba.
Right.
Sent back.
See, I started studying infrasound as a weapon in the 80s. Once I discovered this, I had a top secret clearance in, so I accessed everything that I could find on it, and I found out a bunch of countries had done extensive research on using infrasound as a weapon. The problem with using infrasound as a weapon is that, just as a subwoofer does, it spreads all over the place. You can't direct it. So then the idea of using very focused ultrasound beams, because as you know, any of you that are stereo freaks, your tweeters have a very focused, narrow narrow,
So you aim the ultrasound and it generates the infrasound in the body of your target.
right, exactly. You have to waver the frequencies, and it works very well. And
And
we've
it
been
affects
able.
people.
Say what?
It affects people.
Now we have found some cheap microphones that in the presence of ultrasound they won't record it directly, but they'll clip, and we can record that quite successfully. All right, another effect that we kept coming on time and time and time again, and if we had a little bit better, if I had better sound capabilities, I've got recordings of it with me. I can let you, if you've got some headphones or something, I can let you come up here and listen to it after the presentation. But we kept hearing this thing. We would hear them coming in on us, and we would hear them doing they do this little locator, little, whoop, kind of a deal, and then we'd hear a little answer like a, or then we'd hear a knock. They keep track of each other as they're moving in on us slowly. But once they got to a certain range, they would go quiet. They go into what we call stealth mode. Well, we had this one recorder with a funky microphone on it, and then when we had been out there enough in the quiet for enough days, we got where we could hear it pretty good ourselves. We hear this sort of a
Kind of what you played earlier.
yeah, you'd hear these little bursts every few seconds. And we figured it out that they're using that either as communication, thinking that we don't hear it, or they're doing that as maybe echolocation. I don't know.
We ain't figured it out yet, but we're working on it.
But I've got a series of recordings of these things over a period of years, and I've got them with me, but I don't know if we have good enough audio here to play them. But they sound fantastic through a set of headphones.
Tim, if you don't mind, just finish the list.
Yeah, let's
we're
go
running
through
out of time.
Yeah. All right. They mimic other animals and humans, including things we say. They can actually say, verbal phrases, repeat us quite well. We figured out how they disguise their tracks. They use a simple language and some native phrases.
Yep, depending on the location.
They use a lot of old Cherokee, where Bear and I are from.
Or Choctaw. It
all
depends on where you're from.
They belly crawl to sneak up on us and other animals. We have figured out their way of methodically dissecting large animals and removing the organs and the blood almost surgically. That's all this mutilation that's attributed to devil worshippers and UFOs and black helicopters and all that. It's Bigfoot doing that. And it took me years.
The laser cuts?
No, they don't use lasers.
I mean, but the cuts are sharp as
They can cut it very, very sharply and cleanly. And I've studied it for decades, and I finally figured it out how they did it. On my farm, I have found as many as 5 deer lined up side by side in an area the size of this stage. All of them. That booger there, the alpha booger on our farm, the old one, he's gone now. Every time he killed a deer or a calf or something, he always laid it on its right side, with the head pointing south, the feet pointing to the east. He would eviscerate it. He'd open it up right behind the rib cage. He would pull out the intestines, lay the intestines right at the rear hoofs, and then he would go in, and I can go in later on how he would take the guts out. Very, very extremely clean method. Nothing but just maybe a little tiny few traces of blood on the ground or anything, but extremely clean, almost surgically precise.
If they don't tote it off.
Now, yeah.
No, they
in the summer and late summer, early fall, they always take the kidneys, the liver, and the heart, sometimes the tongue, sometimes the lungs, if they let the blood coagulate in the thoracic cavity. They will, and the blood soaks into it. Then they will often scoop out the lungs. But always they take kidneys, liver, and heart. Always. And during the summer and early fall, then they'll leave the rest. Now,
But they will
as
consume
the
the
as the
others
fall
during
and
the
winter
winter.
progresses, and way up until you have enough stuff to eat, well after green up in the spring, they will eat a large quantity of the major muscle
Only, and
groups.
here's a kicker too, and I ain't figured it out yet, but I'm thinking it's bruising.
Yeah.
What they do, they'll grab their prey, like a coyote or a white-tailed deer or a calf or whatever, and they will use that limb, whichever foreleg or hind leg they grab, and they'll use that creature's, the prey's momentum and slam it either into the trunk of a tree or into the ground so it will break its neck. They don't want to be bit by a coyote.
I'll show you a coyote that we listened to it being killed. Tom, were you there then, or is it there?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got
This was at
we
LVL.
found it. We went and looked and found it. Yeah, I'll show you the picture here in a second.
Carcass. But
Okay.
anyway, they will not eat the limb that is broke.
Yeah.
For bruising.
Yeah,
Think about it.
they typically catch deer by one of the back feet. And they'll catch them and they'll twist it and slam it into a tree. I have found deer hair wedged in the bark of a tree, 11, 12 feet off the ground, where they've killed it. Okay.
People think they walk up behind them and grab them by the ears, and
Now
they don't work.
they molest and sexually assault livestock.
Yes, they do.
We could do a whole show on that.
No, really, we could.
And some can count up to around 5, and past 5 they don't really.
It's either become more.
In other words, and if you've got 9 chickens out there, you leave them alone, they'll come and steal 4 of them, and they'll leave 5 behind. If you've got a litter of 10, 12 puppies, they'll come, and they won't get them all at once, but they'll get a couple of this night, a couple of the next night. They'll leave you with 5.
Their primitive logic is you've got more and you won't notice it that you've lost limbs.
They get in your hog pen.
Really?
They'll kill.
Really?
They'll haul off all of your shoats but 5.
Yep, we figured that.
They started catching my guineas. They got all of them but 5. I mean, just time after time after time after time.
They can count up to 5. It won't be 1, 2, 3, 4,
You can
5.
you can screw up and leave a bushel basket of apples on your back porch. Come out the next one, all of them be gone but 5.
Oh,
Yeah.
we found that out.
And we have very, very, very detailed descriptions of their habitat preferences.
Yep.
And by the way, just so you know, I have for decades run calculations on their population in the U.S., and I've used the same methods used by the Audubon Society and the Department of Interior, using a software package called Presence and other methods and stuff. And I have 2 control patches that I've counted the boogers in those patches. One of very extremely marginal habitat, which happens to be Edwards Air Force Base, and the other one is extremely good habitat. And I've been around the country enough. I've studied the habitat in every state in the United States, and I've determined estimated populations in every state of the United States, and including Alaska, although I've never been to Alaska, but I've studied the habitat up there and the type of forest and the food sources and everything. And I've come up with a number of, in the 49 states of the U.S., around 63,000 of these things. And that is a very conservative estimate. And I've got calculations that'll stand up to any amount of scrutiny on that. And I have repeated these studies at least 7 times over the years to verify, and using the latest software and techniques that are available for doing population studies of difficult to count animals.
There are some researchers that say that all these identified.
What happens is, now this is getting in an area here, Ken, the guy that counted coup on him when I was standing there taking a leak, and they came up and breathed down my neck. Ken swears up and down that that one of them screamed to him and mind spoke to him and told him to get out of here.
I've seen over 60 over various states in
Yeah.
the South over the years, and every damn time I've seen one, something told me to get the hell going.
Now, let me tell you what
But
I
that's
firmly
natural
believe.
instinct.
Because I have lived this. I believe that there are guardian angels. Absolutely, positively guardian angels. I've had things happen to me that were totally undeniable, and I can tell you those. I believe that when we are in danger, that our guardian angel will speak to us to warn us to get the hell out of there, or to even tell us what's going on in a situation. I've had that happen to me several times, completely away from the Bigfoot world.
That's our
I was
hunter's
2
instinct.
fields
That's
away.
recess.
I was 2 fields away on
It
a
is.
tractor disking a field, and my dad was sitting a half a mile away, 2 fields over, taking a break under a shade tree, and
Y'all
something
have to
spoke to me as clear as you were speaking to me, actually more clear. I need to go check on my dad right now. And I thought, no, I'm gonna finish this field. I only had about 2 or 3 more passes. No, now. And so I pulled the disc up, headed towards it. Something told me, as clear as a voice speaking in my ear, faster. And so I speeded up, faster. I stomped down on the foot feed and yanked the throttle right up and faster. I ended up going into road gear, wide open, as fast as that John Deere would go across the field. And I'm fighting that thing. It's bouncing and stuff like that. I had to go the whole length of that field, down through a hollow, came up the other side, and I had that thing wide open. My dad said he saw the black smoke billowing up and heard the tractor roaring before he saw me. I crested over the hill, and my dad's sitting in his chair looking at me like, what in the hell is he doing, And I'm bearing down on him. I'm thinking, why am I doing this? And all of a sudden, I saw a 4.5 foot long timber rattler crawling up behind my dad. And my dad is horrendously allergic to antivenom. So if that thing had bitten him, it would have killed him.
Tim, we gotta go.
Right. Anyway, I don't know how I did it, but I'm roaring down on him. My dad's looking at me like, getting this look of fear in his eyes, wondering, what am I doing? I'm wondering, how am I going to get off this tractor? Somehow I yanked the emergency brake up, slapped it out of gear, yanked the wheel to the right, the tractor starts skidding. I bailed off of it. If y'all have seen the Matrix movies, how they run and shoot like that, I drew my pistol, I'm running like this. Dad is about here to that fellow back there at the corner. The snake's drawing back, fixing to bite him. I pulled the trigger and took the snake's head right off at a dead run. There is absolutely no way I feel that the angel steadied my
I wish we had more time to talk
Yeah.
to you guys. We appreciate y'all coming.
Yes, very much.